right, we'll call this meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This meeting of the East Troy School District, Board of Education, and all other meetings of the board are open to the public in compliance with state statute. Notice of the meeting has been sent to the media and/or has been publicly posted in an attempt to make the citizens of the district aware of the time, place, and agenda of this meeting.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda as posted.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion on the agenda? All right.
No.
All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda's approved.
I'd also like to make a motion to approve the minutes from the March 15th, 2021 regular board meeting, March 29th, 2021 special board meeting, and the April 2nd, 2021 special board meeting.
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion or changes to the meeting minutes? All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Public participation. Is there anybody here tonight that would like to speak? Yes.
Can I speak now?
Sure.
Microphone?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. Actually, I've been up since 4 o'clock this morning, worked 11 hours, drove here real quick, and so I could join this meeting. As you know, I was recently elected to the board, and I feel privileged and honored to contribute to that. So tonight, I just want to put a few things out there, just something to kind of get the mind working and to generate some ideas. Well aware the district is in a bad financial situation. It's obvious, and the referendum did not pass. So it almost feels like we're on our knees right now, and we got to do something. So I have a few proposals. You can knock them. You can say, good idea. You can think about it, or do whatever you want to do with it. But I'm going to start out with this first one, and that is the Dobeck School. Why are we even in that school anymore? Maybe it was a good idea to be in there in the beginning. We're using possibly 5,000 square feet. Maybe we can get by with 3,000 square feet. My idea is to put that thing on the market, ASAP, lease back the space from the new buyer, and take that money and reinvest it into your maintenance and getting out of that school. Do not stick a penny into that school. It's a rat hole. It's been there since 1954 or wherever, and it's just not worth it anymore. And maybe we can get a line of credit on it. I don't know whether that's possible or not. I know any business that I have, even on my farm, I have a line of credit. I go so that if I need to get $20,000, $30,000, $50,000, easy to do. I don't know if the district's in that situation or not, but we need to be in that situation. We need to have cash on hand for emergencies and money to go to at all times. Any business needs that. The only time in my life that I didn't experience a company that didn't have a line of credit was the Chrysler Corporation in 2007. I was working in Sterling Heights, Michigan, and they were on their knees so bad they couldn't even afford to mow the lawn. A bunch of guys got their lawnmowers out and mowed the lawn at the Sterling Heights assembly plant. That's how desperate it was. We didn't even know if we were going to get a paycheck. It's not a good position to be in, guys. You got to get out of that and get in a much better position. My other option is this. I've been in maintenance for 30 years, engineering, 10 years of that. And I'm going to meet with Chris, I think it's Wednesday, I think. I'm going to look at the maintenance breakdown and find out what we really need to do. I'm pretty good at it. I can prioritize it. Flat roofs leak. That's what flat roofs do. They leak. I've never worked in a place that flat roof didn't leak. Boilers need repairs. prioritize it, and see if you can kind of stretch that maintenance out a little bit to conserve some of the cash that you have to outlay. My other item is to energy conservation. When I'm looking here, see that hallway's got lights on it? That hallway's got lights on it. If I'm at home and I leave a light on in a room, my wife says, Dale, turn that light off. Or if I leave the door open, what you got the door open for? We kind of need that here. How many times, I can tell you, I drove in by Gus's and I see the lights on in the field. That's a bad signal to the people. I'm saying, why do they got those lights on? Maybe it doesn't mean anything, and maybe there's a reason for it, but we need strict conservation. Set a target, reduce energy costs by 20%. Turn down the air conditioning, turn off the air conditioning in rooms, turn lights off when you're not there, so on and so forth. It's hard, it's not easy to do, but if you get everybody on the same page, it can be accomplished. Also, I think if we do some fundraising, and everybody's going to say, fundraising? What do you mean by fundraising? You're doing fundraising right now with your FFA. Saturday, they're going to have, all the farmers are bringing in their old equipment, and they sell it, so on and so forth. Let me give you a good example of fundraising, just in a local community here. It was about 2-3 years ago. The Catholic Church, which me and my wife go to, the Father Mark was in the back, and he had broken a stained glass window. So he had a gentleman come in and say, hey, you know, will you fix this window? How much? He goes, that's not your problem. He says, I'll fix that window, he says, but all your other stained glass windows are falling apart, particularly the ones on the south side of the building. What's the cost to fix all that? $80,000. So he didn't have the money at all. He didn't have any way to pay for it at all. So he fundraised. And lo and behold, within 4 or 5 months, they raised that $80,000. They raised it because they had good communication with the churchgoers, and they were talking back and forth. They set goals. And that goes right as my next point. Open a communication with the community. Yes, we have the cameras. We have the open meetings, and anybody could come here. But how many people are here? Few. But we need more. We need the whole community involved. And if that means posting something in the East Troy News with 5 bullet points, when I go to church and I open up the paper they give you, there's usually a balance of money received, money they owe. So it's always forefront what their financial situation is. And they're always communicating with the people that go to church. We need to do the same thing. This school district needs to do the same thing. And then also, believe it or not, I've been getting some calls. People are calling me. And they're willing to assist. You may think the community doesn't care because they rejected the referendum, but they do. They'll stuff envelopes. They'll do whatever they can. So maybe we can put together a group of people, retired people, people that are not doing nothing, to help us out with some of the mundane duties, maybe stuffing envelopes or whatever, some free labor. But it's going to take not just one thing. It's going to take a lot of things just to make things better, to turn it around. Because if you go the way you're going now, you know the direction it's going to go, and it's not pleasant. So you got to turn it around and start to make a profit. Think of it as business, because it is a business. It's a business of education. Turn it around and start to get your books together and come up with ideas, put it together. Cut cost, sell assets, whatever. Those are some of the items that you need to do. So that's my point. I mean, we can talk about, I'd like to expand the trades program. I think I can do that. I've already talked to Target about expanding the trades, and we can have an in-depth talk about that. But it's kind of a long-term thing. Right now, I feel we need to stop the bleeding and to stop it as soon as possible. That's what I got to say.
Thanks, Dale. Would anybody else like to speak tonight? Whoever wants to go first.
So, Teresa Barrett, my husband Tony, we really just wanted to thank everybody that helped out with trying to get the information out in regards to the referendums and what the school's needs were. And we're disappointed, you know, that the referendums didn't pass. We're not giving up hope. We know that the referendums were absolutely necessary. I know that the board put in a ton of time along with the administration to come up with different ways of doing things, and that the referendums is what they felt was the only way at the time. And so I applaud your efforts, and like I said, we are fully in support of that. We've decided that we're going to donate what the referendum would have cost us in our tax hike, and because we support that. We know that that's what the school needed, and I don't envy the board's position to come up with how to make the budget work, but we're hopeful that you'll do it in a way that least impacts the children negatively. So.
Yeah. So a donation from our family isn't a small thing. We're not people with a lot of money to throw around, but we totally believe in the school district and that they're going to continue to spend the money the right way, as they always did. It's a good board, good administration, and yeah. Some people might say, hey, maybe just throw it in your kid's college fund instead. But you know, right now is when our kids in our community need help, and I feel that's the most important. And to stop the bleeding would have been to pass this so we could work on long-term solutions, but just made the job harder. But I think we got people that'll find a way and get it done. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Teresa. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you, Teresa and Tony.
My name's Adam Wikowitz. I'm a parent and a property owner in the community, and these guys just kind of stole my thunder. I also am going to make a donation to the school district. I just don't really know who to write the check to and where to put it, but if that's easy to do, I'd like to do that today before I leave. Can't stay for the whole meeting. I also want to say that during the campaign leading up to and immediately right after, there was a lot of discussion in the community and online, and specifically some of the statements that were made that said, if this doesn't pass, you don't care about the kids in the community, and I wholeheartedly disagree. I think reasonable minds can disagree, but I believe that, you know, emotions are running high, but and community members we can live with, but when you have members of the school board saying such disparaging remarks about their constituents, I don't think that's very constructive. As close as the vote was, if some of that negativity could have been turned into a little bit more positivity, at least one of them could have passed, in my belief. So I hope that, you know, I anticipate there being another referendum probably next year. If it's legal, I don't know the ramifications of that. But if there is, I would hope that there'd be a little bit more constructive dialogue that happens, especially coming from the leadership of the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak? Yes.
My name is Carrie McBurney. I'm a community member and staff member here, and two issues I want to speak on. One, the referendum. I just want to thank everybody sitting here, anybody listening in the community, absolutely our administrators and all staff, because this was a hard thing to swallow, and I know that admin are putting in and board members are putting in tons of extra hours and work to try to figure out, as the Barrett said, how to make this work that in a way that impacts the kids as least as possible, as minimally as possible. So just a thank you in advance, a thank you because the time has already started and been spent, and all of the time and energy that went into those who supported and advocated positively for the referendum. I know there was a committee of people who did so, and I was really proud of the work that was accomplished there. I was really impressed by the factual information that went out from the people representing the positive side of the referendum, the reason that we needed it. So thank you for that. I'm also humbled by the donations tonight, and gives me an idea to try and do the same, convince some of my neighbors to do the same. So, I mean, like you said, it's not going to fix things, but if everybody who voted yes can pitch in a little bit, I mean, that's a great idea. Just got that one tonight. Thank you. I also just wanted to proactively speak about a topic that I believe, if I'm incorrect, I'm sorry, might come up tonight about the mask mandates. Clearly some things have changed among the state, and while I truly believe, like this gentleman behind me talked about everybody having their own opinions, their own rights, I think that the science can tell us that masks have stopped some of the spread, not all of the spread, but some of it. Adults have the option to get vaccinated now. Children under the age of 16 do not. And most of the children who attend East Troy do not have that option, or families do not have the option for them. We have several staff members going through some heart-wrenching health problems right now, some of the worst imaginable. We also have staff members who are going home to spouses or siblings with some of the scariest diseases that are among us. And so if this comes up for conversation, because we work directly with children who cannot get vaccinated, I just hope and pray that we can have the decency, respect, kindness to show our fellow staff members that we care about their health too, and that we will continue to have our kids be masked at least through the end of this school year. I believe that was something that was discussed earlier, and I just hope that it stays that way, because I don't want any of teachers have been positive, but we're obviously going through a lot of emotions right now, and coupling that with some health problems that people are having, I just hope that we can show them the respect by keeping ourselves masked, that we want to keep them as safe as we can. So that's all. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you.
Anybody else like to speak? All right, we'll move on to we have no financial report tonight, so discussion action items. First one is outcome of the referendum questions.
I guess first and foremost, if any board members have any comments first, due to the fact that I can be a little long-winded, as we know. So I will try to keep that to a minimum based upon how long the board members have for comments. So, and then I can adjust my comments and everything. So really, first and foremost, due to the fact I know the board had the excruciating task of having to decide last April for the referendum, and then going through all the difficult discussions and information and factual information that was shared on numerous levels in regards to so many varying components that went into it, toward determining the two questions that came forth to the community for this April, for this April's election. I guess I would leave it open to the board to offer any comments, thoughts, or by all means, you can choose to pass, which we respect greatly in the educational world when we talk to our students or our fellow staff members. So I'll leave it at that and turn it over to all of you first, and then I will be more than happy to offer a few comments.
I would just like to say, like most people, well, I shouldn't say that, but most people in this room, very disappointed on the outcome of both questions, but not devastated, because we have the opportunity to maybe go back in the fall, maybe go next year and see if we can find a way to convince some of the no's why they need to be a yes, and with some changes that maybe we can make on our end to make that amount less somehow, make it a little more palatable. Maybe we do one question. But yeah, I was disappointed, to say the least, on the outcomes. I had trouble believing it, to tell you the truth, because I had such a positive feeling from the district. But I'm not devastated. We'll get through it, and we'll figure out a way. So.
I too want to share that same sentiment. I am disappointed, but I do feel like it is an opportunity to do something different. Tony and Teresa, you guys are leading by example. And I know it's, we don't all have money to throw around, it's a working class community. But you've inspired me to do some of the same, so thank you.
Well, when I saw it fail, instantly I asked why. And I'm trying to figure it out like everybody. And one of the things when I saw the breakdown of the voting that became very clear is that, and I'm not knocking anybody by saying this, but it's clear by the votes that we haven't come up with a solution that the two towns in our district can agree on. The village overwhelmingly voted yes, and the towns overwhelmingly voted no. And I think there's a long history of this for our district. And I think the solution starts with figuring out what the town can agree on, or the two towns, because without them, we're not going to be able to do much. So if we can sit down and work it out with whatever representatives from that area, and I don't know who that would be, because I know the current presidents there, or chairs, actually supported the referendum. So it's all just really interesting, but I do think we need to come together and figure it out with the towns. So.
The thing that amazes me the most about the way this all played out is it really came down to awareness. The thing that I'm struck by, even as we sit in this room tonight, is hearing things being said that simply aren't factual or aren't entirely factual. And I guess the one request I would have, I don't see how we don't come back with a new formulated question or questions, because there are no easy answers. But as the discussion was happening, there were a handful of people who were very clearly not in favor of the referendum, but were thinking through the problems we were facing in a logical way. Even if we were coming up with different opinions, it was clear that there was a desire to play an active role. The irony is, as we sit here and talk into the camera tonight in this meeting, the people that probably are already making the effort to be most informed are the ones that are either sitting in this room or are watching on YouTube or wherever else it is. And what needs to happen more than anything else right now is really two things. People need to, A, make the effort to be as informed about what's going on and the management in this district as the people who have played a more active role historically. But the other part is, even if you learn and you disagree with what's being said up here, those are things we need to hear about in advance. By the time we got to the question formulation, we had to formulate the questions back in December. By the time we got to the point that the questions were published, the discussion had largely taken place. And then we didn't have the ability to even modify questions as public sentiment changed or as new ideas came to light. I've said several times over the last couple of weeks that lately the thing that frustrates me most about the community is we tend to vacillate between apathy and outrage. And I get the outrage. There are things about the position we're in that I am absolutely furious about. This isn't the appropriate time to bring them up, so we won't. But there are things that happen outside of this district that we have very little control over. The apathy we can control. If we all choose to take a more active role, whether it be reaching out to board members, emailing the district, there are so many different ways it can happen. We're back to square one. We can't stay here very long. If we stay here more than a couple of days, we just create more unknown. So whether you're listening at home or wherever you get this message, please reach out. If you have ideas, share them. As Mr. Ames said, there are empty seats in this room. When I was in high school, there were no empty seats in these rooms. If you came to the annual meeting, it was standing room only. And as we look around this room tonight, it's primarily people that work in the district. We need more public participation. Without it, we're going to keep going through this dance over and over again. So.
I agree with what everybody's here said. Again, I was very disappointed after that vote, and for about 24 hours was really down about it. After that, as the same type of thing we want to teach all our kids, I'm going to pick myself up and I'm going to keep fighting for this district as long as it takes to get something to pass and to fix our financial issues moving forward. So that's really all I can say.
It's way too much time for me. I know. Bob, you said an interesting thing when the annual meetings used to be packed when you were in high school. And roughly you and I are in that same relative age group. And I too remember that. But I also remember that at that point in time in education, that was pre-revenue limits, which allowed the school district's boards of education to determine what type of education they wanted to provide for the kids, and then set a tax levy toward whatever that meant to provide that education that they determined was of quality for the kids that they wanted in their community. And since that time, things have changed, to be quite frank. And that's why not a lot of people attend an annual meeting, because there is no really limit that has to be set at that point in time, because it's already been set by the revenue limit itself, if, you know, in general. So I just think Bob brings up a great point. I hope everyone understands what I'm saying. I know Bob understands and the rest of the board, and it's not questioning it. I think it's a great point by him. I'm just bringing up a point why, unfortunately, I think there's less people at those meetings. And unfortunately, what it's done to elected school board members at those meetings too, because they may want a certain educational system, but they're going to be told, this is the educational system you're going to get, unless you go to a possible referendum. And I'm not saying that means you have to. I'm saying that's what they have to determine for the balancing act of budgets and deficits and what they deem is appropriate for an educational value. And that's the conundrum. I think everybody said it very well. I was very disappointed. You know, I have to remain totally neutral and unbiased during the component of the referendum. I have to try to remain as neutral as possible, but yet present information about the referendum and the facts that go with it. And that's a balancing act, right? Due to the fact, as a superintendent, as people hear you giving information, it's kind of obvious, right, that they think you should be an advocate for what's being proposed. And rightly so. I mean, I would like to believe the first and foremost thing is we're all advocates for children, and that's why it got proposed. Then the question is it affordable? Is it the right solution? Is it the right time? Is it the right message, right? All the things that go into a referendum, if you even want to call it campaign to a degree. A letter was sent out this morning by me to all the East Troy Community School District families. I will be putting a letter in the paper to the East Troy community. It'll be roughly the same as what I sent to the families today. And that's just the facts, in my mind. The letter was pretty clear. It stated that, as you are likely aware, both referendum questions on the ballot April 6th fell short of being approved by the voters. In the East Troy Community School District, we learned that a majority of our community members felt that the solutions presented were either not needed or did not represent the right solution for our students, schools, and community at this time. Below are the unofficial results. This was when I wrote it. They were more unofficial, which we saw that the operational had 46% toward the yes, and the operational had 54% no. Different than last April, to a degree. I went back and looked. Now, granted, that was one question last April versus two this April. Last April was 57% no and 43% yes. So that even had a 3% swing, even on that question alone, toward support of the referendum question. And the capital maintenance was at a 49% yes and a 51% no. I just go on to state, and I think everybody has stated already here, that our needs related to our projected operational structural deficits are not going to go away, nor will our long-term maintenance needs go away. We're going to begin working, and we already have. We'll be going into closed session tonight to share our proposal with the board on staffing and programming cuts of $800,000. And then we will be going into an open meeting at a special meeting, which will be determined by the board. That will be determined under agenda item H tonight, which I would recommend that we have a special meeting probably next Monday, but the board can determine availability. That would be an open meeting, and that'll be when the $800,000 of proposals of our budget will be shared publicly. And we will go through them line item by line item to help the community understand, as is done each and every year. In 14 years I've been here, it's been done each and every year. And then the board will have to determine what they elect to approve of within those line item requests and what they elect to possibly pause on, ask for other considerations. And then the proper notifications will occur to our staff and to our community in regards to that, to meet the necessary timelines for statute requirements, which we are under certain statute requirements of making sure people receive proper notifications. There's no doubt there's just going to be very difficult decisions. I don't know how else to say it. Our administrative team had a debriefing today. I think that gets to remain confidential, as it's a safe zone. But I can say there was a lot of emotion. I can say I've had a lot of emotion since last Tuesday. Yeah. I can state, as the leader of the district for the last 14 years, with the help of so many people, including the over 211 staff, who I'm very proud to say I work with, and over all the board members who I've served with for 14 years. Served for, not with. I work for them. I'm proud to say that I think we have lived up to this mission statement that's on the back of every one of a board members when they're elected and they're put on here. That mission statement has not been easy to live up to when you're having to do significant cuts and structural changes each and every year. I have no problem having done it. I think where I feel a little bit disappointed, to be honest, if I can be, there's a piece of me that needs to apologize to our staff. 10 plus years ago, I said to our staff very directly, when I was getting strongly pushed about going to referendums, I said, no, we cannot go to referendums at this time. At that time, there was much uncertainty in the economy. I get it, there still is to this day. I think to a certain degree, if we're all being honest, there's always uncertainty. But what I told them was, we need to continue, because we're in our 4th year. We need to continue to represent to our communities that we're balancing our budgets and that we're doing everything possible to control expenses, control our debt, and begin to do a lot of impact needs, investing accordingly, so we keep kids and families, so we attract kids and families. Because we know that's our revenue maker, besides it being the right thing for the kids. And they understood it. I think I shared with them all the things that we still needed to do. I wouldn't say they all agreed with it, right? We don't always have agreement on everything. But I think they understood it, and I think they respected where I was coming from. I think. Where I feel really bad about it today is that I really think that they were thrilled that now we'd gotten to that time. And I think they were thrilled that I didn't vote on it, the board gets to, but that I was strongly in support of that next step, due to the fact we lived up to what we said we needed to do on all of those components. So we experienced, year after year, a lot of structural reorganization, a lot of changes. Changes to health benefits, changes to pensions, changes to salaries and freezing of salaries some years. We did a lot of those things. Unfortunately, I have to say too, we had to lose some staff in that process, or reorganize staff that resulted in us having to make 2 part-time staff members to save on benefits, which we said was tough, but the right thing to do for kids at the time. But over a course of time, we also found out that some of those positions could be maintained with part-time people, right? You just can't. You have turnover way too quick. It happens way too often. There's too many people that are marketable, and they can get a full-time job, and they can get the benefits, and they can get better pay. So we found that we had to pick and choose on that. There were tough choices, what I'm trying to say all along. I hope people do understand that there was many things that have always been done, and it's not reactive. There's a lot of thought put into all that proactive stance about attracting and keeping kids, attracting and keeping staff. We try to live up to our district goals. But we went to the board strongly urging a consideration of some sort of questions to be developed, and they did a great job developing 2 of them, I thought. And I respect that the community didn't, at this time, approve of them. But I can say very frankly, I would be absolutely lying telling you I'm not unbelievably disappointed, due to the fact I think we've done so much. And I think we've done so much to not come to that operational referendum up until this point in time. When other districts, and I know many people always call me on it, don't compare us to other districts. I'm not. I'm just saying a flat out reality, when other districts have been going to so many for so long. And so there's that disparity, and it's difficult. A shout out, I'll use my kids' languages, a shout out to our staff who have stuck around, through all of it. And they do it because they serve at the pleasure for those kids. That doesn't mean that people are doing it for free. I don't imply that. And I don't imply that any of us are doing it for free. I'm not implying that either. But what I am saying is they're not necessarily doing it because, they're getting unbelievably wealthy from it either. But I don't expect people to feel sorry for everybody in education. I just want people, and I'm not saying that people don't who didn't vote for it, but I really hope that what can return back to education, and I will say it, it's an opinion, and it's not about if you voted no that you don't feel this way. I'm not implying that. But overall, in general, what I would like to see return back to education is pride. Pride to be an educator, pride to have people talk about education and educators. It's like there has to be a division now on everything. And it really is unbelievably sad in my mind for our kids. I just turned 50. You know, I worry more about my kids and all the other kids than I do me. But I'm a person about unity, not division. And I know that sounds really good and everything, but no, it's not about good. I just don't understand why it can't occur on so many different things. And why there's got to be such staunch stances on so many things. Here's the reality, and this is where I'm going to end it. I went way off my notes, so I'm not going to try for a life of me to go back. What I was hoping the referendum would provide was stability. Stability. In a time in which I feel the best way to manage uncertainty, I said it at numerous board meetings, the best way for us to manage uncertainty is by doing our best to provide stability. And I just really believe to provide stability helps to provide certainty. And I think that's demonstrated in more than a referendum, by all means. But I think that's what we absolutely had to focus on this past year with the pandemic and what we had to do for everybody in our community and our families. We had to provide that stability. And trust me when I tell you, there's a reason why 97% of the people say, great job, because we provided certainty. And then they could do things to make choices that assisted them in their families and for their children. And our staff, even our staff that was concerned, right? They had every right to be concerned about what was going on back in August. They just wanted some stability to provide that certainty, and then we got moving. And they all stepped up to the plate. And they've done an incredible job, which I never doubted in a second. They just needed certainty to be provided to cause some of that anxiousness to be taken down. It's the same thing here in my mind. The reason the two questions were brought forth by this board in my mind, and they can disagree with me, but I think it was to provide that stability, that certainty, so we don't have uncertainty. And I just really feel that we were really close to providing such strong stability. And I really do fear that people don't understand what that lack of stability, when you don't have it, and the uncertainty, what it does to an organization, a culture. And I really think people misrepresent the term culture. I think they think culture is just something that's lucky or that it just naturally happens. And I don't believe that at all. I don't think it's something that just happens. I think culture is something that you work diligently to build daily, monthly, yearly. It's how you treat people. It's how you speak about people. It's how you show them if you respect them. And I'm not saying that those things were demonstrated by a vote one way or the other, because I think more important than a vote is how people feel they're being valued or represented when people talk about the people that work in the organization. But I think that's really important. And I think the big thing that is the big questions out there, I haven't had a chance to speak to our staff besides our administrative team. But I think the big questions that are out there that I'm going to take a guess at, knowing our staff really well and knowing how all of us felt, and that is I think the uncertainty is the lack of that term value. What is valued? Value in education, value in staff, value in children, value in professionalism, value is what is best for the learner. And I think what happens when you start questioning a lot of value, the word value gets lost, and now you start to wonder. You wonder about what is valued rather than knowing what is valued. And I think that's scary. I mean, I do. I don't want our staff to feel that they're not valued. And I don't want our children to not have the programming and the right staffing. that they deserve. And I don't want people to take leadership for granted. Because I have no problem if anybody wants to dispute it. I lead this team of leaders here, meaning all the supervisors and administrators. That's primarily my job. And I'll tell you what, go to other places. Look at leadership teams, then come back, talk to me. Tell me what you think about our leadership team, because I'll tell you what, it's darn good. Leadership teams that are good when they're open and they have constant voice and dialogue and ideas are shared and disputes happen and you still get things done. And you never once lose what's the most important thing throughout the dialogue. And that is not us, not others, but children. Children stay in the center, even through the dispute. We get back to children. It's about the children. And where I struggle and where we got to find out an answer is this, and that is, if we're about kids, and we're an educational system. We have to be about kids, and we have to be about kids first. I'm not saying other things aren't important, but they have to be 1B, 1C, 1D. They cannot be 1A. Children has to be 1A. And if that's not accurate, then we've got a problem. And I'm not saying it's not accurate, but here's the challenge. How do we continue to support 1A, the children, when we are struggling so bad to necessarily then provide the necessary resources if we have to address these structural deficits? So I think that's the ongoing challenge. I'm not saying it can't happen. I just think that's the challenge. So we're at a very difficult time. I would love to tell the people watching, we're not. Everything's going to be just picture perfect. We have to cut $800,000. It's not going to be picture perfect. We're going to do it through obviously looking at insurance once again. We're going to do it again through, we already said we're giving salary increases this year. We froze everybody last year. But we'll look at what's that mean for a salary increase. Can we help out the budget some way? And then there's no ifs, ands, or buts. We're going to have to look at people. When 77% of your budget is staffing, you have to look at people. So that'll be what we will be deciding and voting on. And, I want people to recognize it's not the first year. We've done this for 14 years. So I think, a very good article came out a couple months ago that I shared with this board, and it said, even for districts who are in good financial position, you will have the following challenges. How will you address the varying modes of instruction that need to occur for in-person, virtual, cohorts, blended learning choices, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? How are you going to address that? And this is for districts who are financially sound. They're saying these will still be challenges for you. So let's think about the districts that are not feeling, we are financially sound from a standpoint, we have a balanced budget every year. But we are facing structural deficits because our expenses are increasing past the revenue limit. We know that. Enrollments. Who's going to get the kids and who won't? Gaps. There were already achievement gaps prior. Not for our district, I'm just saying for everybody, this is the article. But you're going to have more achievement gaps and more emotional gaps than you've ever had before with the pandemic. How are you going to handle the learning loss? What services will be provided to these kids that you don't have now that you need to provide more of with the pandemic? For districts that are struggling, they say, how are you going to continue to overcome your financial losses due to your operational challenges that you currently have, due to the ongoing revenue gap that you're going to have, and due to the new COVID-19 expenses? How will you convince people to be within your district when support for referendums continues, the disparity? These are just the points that were made in the article, and I think it's a good article. And then when we added, that wasn't in the article, but our administrative team added, how does one continue to the ability to recruit and retain quality staff in a challenging time. So I think those are the things, we're well-versed in where our challenges are. And I think we're pretty well-versed at dealing with them. And I think we've been pretty well-versed at providing a lot of quality stuff to our students for opportunities over these last few years. But I will say, I think we're gonna be facing a bigger challenge due to the fact we've gotten so well-versed at it that sooner or later, it does become more difficult with ideas. So I think I want to speak to Ted, he's the board president, and that is, the administrative teams, obviously, we're not going to back down from the challenge. We're up for it, we'll be working heavily with the school board. But I think there's a little bit of we can't stay in that long, I agree with Bob, but there's been a little bit of a, if you could call it grieving time, where you have to go through disbelief, anger, and acceptance. And I'm not gonna speak for anybody where we're at, which stage. So, that's that, and I do wanna state this, finally. I appreciate all the community that did come out and vote, one way or the other. I really appreciate it. That's democracy, and I appreciate that. I mean, that's how you have to represent that. You can't be upset about democracy when it doesn't go your way, right? I mean, I don't buy that. I don't like that when people get all upset about an outcome and they're like, well, it didn't go my way. I just want people to understand, I'm just very concerned about the outcome. The outcome's the outcome. Now we gotta deal with it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chris. Anybody else have any other comments, or we'll move on? Okay. Next item, staffing retirements.
We have two. One was just, I think, handed. Mark, did you hand it out yet, or is it all on my? Is all right. So we have two. One is Miss Sue Equi. I will read her letter to each one of you. Dear Dr. Chairman, Mr. Wertz, and the administrative team, after giving it much consideration, I have decided to retire. The results of the referendum questions were part of my decision. I attended East Troy schools from kindergarten through 12th grade and then taught here for 42 years. It saddens me to think that the voters did not understand the importance of supporting their school district. I also know that you will have many difficult decisions moving forward, and my heartfelt prayers go out to each of you. I thank you for giving me the opportunity to teach over 4,000 students. That's unbelievable. In East Troy. I hope they enjoyed making music with me as much as I enjoyed making music with them. Sincerely, Sue Equi. That would be the first one in administration, obviously, and if Mark has anything to share, I'd just like to say thank you to Sue. When you hear the number 4,000 students, it's unbelievable. Unbelievable, besides the 42 years given to education. I just want to personally thank Sue. I've only had the privilege of knowing her for 14 years, so anybody who's gotten a chance to know her for much more than that, lucky you. That's all I'm going to say. Mark?
Yeah, 42 years and adapted to the ever-changing environment and was ready to meet the needs of our kids regardless. I'm super proud of all the time and energy and commitment that she demonstrated to our school and our district.
And she taught me back in school. She's a great teacher.
Taught a lot of
Yeah, me too.
Yep. She will be missed.
And then the next individual is Terry Knack. Terry writes to Kate, Miss Harder, who is her immediate supervisor. Dear Kate, I'm writing this letter to officially inform you of my intent to retire from East Troy Community School District at the end of this school year. I have felt proud, especially this school year, with the face-to-face instruction having been provided for all students, to work for the East Troy Community School District. I'm truly honored at having had the opportunity to be a part of this district for the past 5 years. Thank you for all your support. With sincere gratitude, Terry Knack. And Kate, I don't know if you have anything to add?
Yeah, Terry's been a great addition to our staff. She has only been here for 5 years, but it's been wonderful. She's been working through a partnership that we have with Whitewater School District, so she's been spread across both districts and all of our buildings, and she's done a fabulous job for us in meeting the needs of many students across both districts.
I will make the motion to approve both resignations with thanks of the district.
Retirement.
Thanks and gratitude, and I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, student representative report. Sarah?
So FFA competed in their virtual speaking competition, and they have 9 students advancing to sectionals in May. The week of March 29th, the high school hosted a safe and successful dodgeball tournament. The district-wide book drive for Malawi, Africa was a huge success. We exceeded our goal, collecting over 2,000 books, and are able to complete 1 full library and assisting with 2 half libraries. FFA is also working on a community garden, and this week pronoun pins are being sold at the high school to raise funds for the Trevor Project. Spring sports, track, baseball, softball, and boys golf will be starting next week. And then junior prom will be hosted on Friday, May 21st, and will include grand march, dinner, and activities at Urban Air. And then senior graduation will be held on Sunday, June 13th, outdoors in the football stadium.
All right, thank you, Sarah. Next item, COVID-19 update.
So I'll try to present it the same way I have all year, so you guys, that way you have a tracking and everything. I know that you keep track. So our current numbers on our dashboard, that's on our webpage, since September 1st to date, we've had 104 positive cases within district. We've had 287 quarantine in district exposures, and we've had 352 quarantine that have been non-district exposures to date. Since March 15th, when our last regular school board meeting was, we've had 5 positive cases. We've had 14 quarantine within the district exposure, and we've had 5 quarantine for non-district exposure. For staffing, to date, we have had 180 leave requests that were due to, again, some related COVID reason. That could be directly to them or family, or being identified as a close contact within our own district. And please remember that none of the 180 includes any other additional absences. So it gives, again, right, that essence of understanding the additional amount of absences this year due to COVID and the pressures that were put on kind of the school from a substitute list and just maintaining and sustaining instruction. To give you a little idea of the timeline, as we know, back in the fall, we had the greatest number of absences in our staff, especially in November. But to give you a little bit, so in the new year, in around January 18th, we had 18. February 15th, we had 5. March 15th, we had 1 at that time. And as of today, we have 0. Now, we just did return from spring break, which I know somebody could argue and say, well, yeah, you just returned from spring break. Yeah, I get it. It could have led to other people being out from possibly what was, activities. But at this time, we have 0 out due to the COVID part, not that we didn't have people gone today. Walworth County COVID-19 district geographical boundary. Again, this is the district geographical boundary, so it's not Walworth County altogether. It's our district within Walworth County. Our highest confirmed rate ever, to give you an idea, just so you went back, I went back and looked at the tracking. On October 25th, there was 109 confirmed cases within that district geographical boundary, which was a 93.94 rate. And again, that rate's based off of per 10,000 in our populace, which off the top of my head, I think they have in the populace, they're around 11,603 or something. That's completely off my head. As of today, I tried to look at it over like almost 2-week periods in time. So basically from March 22nd to February, or till April 2nd, you might say, well, today's April 12th, Chris. Yeah, I don't have the 2-week period of time yet. That's the point. So the 3/22 to 4/2, there were 26 confirmed cases, which equates to a 22.41 rate, which puts us in that moderately high. To give you an idea again, the last couple of weeks prior to that, we'd been in the moderate. We had actually dipped down to 13 confirmed cases for the previous whole month prior to that, which was an 11.20 rate. So we went from a high, unbelievably well beyond the critical of 50 plus in October. We were at 93.94, right? And then we slowly started getting to 31, and then to 13, and to 13. And then we did bump up a little bit from the end of March to early April to 26. So we finally went from critical to moderately high to moderate, but now we did jump back up to moderately high again with the 22.41 rate, which is barely in the moderately high. It's almost moderate. On the full virtual learning report, again, I always use it as our baseline. At the beginning of the year, per our registration process, we had 147 students that chose our full-time virtual option, which is our live streaming, right, that we provided into our classrooms this year. But it's full-time. Like, these students elected to go full-time. They weren't even coming for a course or a period or a day. They're weekly, all in virtual, which equated to 9.8% of our populace at the beginning of the school year. And then since then, we've gone down steadily to the point that on April 12th today, we're at 94 students, which is 6.3%. So we've gone down steadily from 9.8 to 8.5 to 7.1 and 6.7, and now we're down to 6.3. But with that, I would be ill-advised not to tell you, if you recall, we said we were going to treat spring break the same way as we did any other holiday. So we sent a letter off to all parents reminding them that, if you'd like, you might want to consider going temporary virtual for a week or two upon return, due to the fact, we don't know possibly if there's been any unintended exposures, which could lead to possible close contacts, right? So again, totally optional, but we remind parents of that choice. And today we had 44 pupils, 44 children attend the temporary virtual that usually aren't ever in the full-time virtual. So if you really look at it from an aspect of with the full-time virtual and the temporary virtual, it's 138 pupils, which puts us up to 9.2%. But I think that's only going to be because of this next week or two. And after we get through that 14-day period, I believe what you'll see is it's going to not return back to what it was at 9.8. You'll probably return back to more of a 6 to 7% of our student body doing the virtual learning. Our transportation, our first week of school, we had 418 AM riders, and we had 508 PM riders on our routes. And since then, we've steadily gone down. The biggest drops we always have is around the holidays, again, because we send letters home, and I think people they do their best to say, we're gonna take a break from the transportation that's provided via the buses, because they do recognize the more that are on the buses, the higher probability close contacts could happen. And then all of a sudden, the next thing you know, we have 8, 10, 15 kids that are quarantined because of an unintended exposure, because we couldn't keep distance on a bus once they get up to, right, once we start having every seat fully have every seat fully attained. Or lately, some of our routes are getting up to 46 kids on a bus ride. So we're almost having 2 to a seat. So that can lead to a close contact pretty quick. We are continuing to do, so right now, as of late March, we had 379 AM riders and 494 PM riders. So a little less than what we had at the beginning of the school year, but I will say it's ticking up. It's ticking up. And I'm not opposed to it ticking up, but I do want people to understand still, we still are doing close contact tracing. So when an exposure happens, we still have to do the close contact tracing. And so it still could result in a child being quarantined. We are doing 2 split routes right now because of driver shortages, which we have been doing for some time. We were doing that before the holiday break. And I don't mean this holiday break. I'm talking the winter holiday break. We've been doing split routes because of driver shortages. So split routes are, we go pick up an early route, we bring them in early, we have supervisors there early that come in early, so then they have to leave earlier because of the amount of time that they only can work within a day. And then our bus drivers head back out, pick up another route, bring them in. And that we make it work. But it does affect a lot of things. You're talking about driver time, you're talking about supervision time. And you only can have, again, a certain number of days, you also start getting into all the overtime. So all those things happen. We also have 2 combined routes in addition to the split routes. So at one point in time, we always try to do the split routes more than the combined routes. Why? We're controlling the populace, the volume on the bus, right? So we don't want to combine routes. But we do look at combining some routes if they have a lower number of kids on them, so we don't have to do as many split routes all over the place. And so we do have currently 2 combined routes going right now, which does lead to a little larger bus sizes, but pretty much reasonable to the other sizes that we have in single roads. Reed's not here for the athletics. The high school football team is in their alternate fall season. Only sport that we did in the alternate season, all the other sports ran in the fall. A lot of other districts went to, they waited till this alternate fall season, so I'm pretty proud that we were able to do much last fall. But things seem to be going really well from a standpoint of safety protocols and from a standpoint of just the children feeling great that they're having a season. I think if you talk to many of the players, they were very concerned that there wouldn't be a football season this year. So I think things are going really well there. From a win-loss, competitive, that seems to be going fairly well too. But out of my league, I won't get into all that. I'm not the athletic director, so nor the coach. But things seem to be going well there.
They're
Stacy,
2-1
Kent,
right
do you have
now.
anything on the prom? Sorry, did I interrupt somebody?
Oh, I said they're 2-1 right now. Varsity team is.
What's 2-1? Mm-hmm. Okay. I saw they beat up pretty well in a different district, but I won't say that publicly. I don't think that's very nice. So.
Their last 2 games were stellar. They were very exciting to watch.
That's great. Stace, Kent, do you have anything to report out from a standpoint of like prom or anything? I know that's late May, or the high school graduation. I know that's still in June, but.
Yeah, so for prom, we followed for junior prom that's coming up, we followed a similar format to what we did for senior prom with the grand march and then dinner and then followed by an activity. So there's So there is a separate permission slip, a Google form that all parents have filled out, that students need to have completed before buying the ticket. So we will be using buses. We've worked with Craig Pape. Students will be riding buses. Janessa Pluis worked with the Delafield Hotel. The juniors wanted it to be pretty fancy, so Janessa worked out a great deal with them, with the Delafield Hotel. So we'll bus up to the Delafield Hotel, eat a nice dinner, and then go to Urban Air and have events there. So the students are very excited about that. Sarah would know more about that than I do. But.
And then the final thing, just an update for the COVID-19 update, and then we'll get into other discussions for the reentry handbook. But I've had some people reaching out saying, so what's happening next year, Dr. Hibner, from a standpoint of the operational model? Obviously we had a huge amount of time this past summer put into what our operational model would look like in the new pandemic year. And so what will next year look like? They're inquiring. It's a fair question. My response has been this at this point in time, one thing at a time, in all due respect. And I've said that. I understand why you want to know. I promise you we'll get to that. Right now, our process that we're going forward with will be, there will be different groups meeting once again, from a student learning side to a social emotional side to the safety and health side that Andy oversees and Janet. So if you recall, we had 3 committees last year that worked diligently over the summer with various representatives on it. We'll probably be reconvening those groups. I don't know what those groups will look like. As the administrative team said to me, right, that some of those people that were on those committees are probably pretty tired. And so we might need new voices, new faces, right? And some might want to continue on it. But our intent is to kind of reconvene, reassess everything, go through current status, and I don't know how else to say it, that as everything has been, it'll be very fluid, right? Because even when these teams are reconvening and coming up with recommendations to then be brought forth to myself and others, and then we'll bring them forth to the board, it's such fluidity and it's so dynamic that what's being decided upon at one day could really change within days and weeks and months of it. But I think that's fair for people just to understand and know, right? So, but that's where we're at, and that's what we'll be looking at and discussing. We first have to get through this budget, I mean, some of our preliminary proposals and ultimately approval by the board for staffing and programming, we have to get through that first. Because we can't be working on an operational model for next year until I know our staffing for next year. Because I have to think about class sizes. I have to think about if 3 feet or 6 feet remain in effect or don't remain in effect. We have to balance that. Like, it may not be in effect next September, but it may be. And so can we provide 3 feet, 6 feet in classrooms based upon class sizes? So those things could affect an operational model. I don't have those answers at this point in time. We have to work through each phase. And we will get there. It's on our radar. As soon as we're getting through this budget, we are already working on that too, simultaneously. Both are going together. And then things will get communicated in time. So that's where we're at for all the COVID-19 update. Any questions?
None for me.
All right, thanks, Chris.
You bet.
Kind of continuing that same theme, school reentry handbook.
Yeah, so this is my last one for the night, so I know you guys will be happy. I actually will. Oh, you know what? There is one more for me. Sorry. So let me rehash a few things on our reentry handbook. As you know, we have a very, I think, in-depth handbook. I mean, it's been updated consistently this year, but it's thick. There's a lot of information in there, and it gets applied. It's not one of those handbooks that's collecting dust. It's always being looked at and revised because we have to implement that. And to be frank, I think we had to implement that very well this whole year, or else you wouldn't have seen us stay in session since September 1st. There's just no way. I mean, we have not had to close anything except at one point in time, we had to take a small break for 2 weeks at a 4K level. That's it. So it's pretty incredible, but it's the work of that booklet, which is the people that really implement it all, right? But as we know, the Wisconsin Supreme Court, in a 4-3 decision, invalidated Governor Evers' public health emergency declaration on March 31st, 2001. So the governor's most recent declaration, which was issued on February 4th, 2001, and that was set to expire on April 5th, 2021. And I think people were wondering, why wasn't I communicating things? I had a few people reach out to me saying, why aren't you talking about the governor's order? And I said, it hasn't expired. And some people were under the impression it had expired on March, 20th or something. In the original one from that next one, I said, no, it's set for April 5th. So that's the reason a lot of things weren't being communicated at the time. And then I knew we were in spring break at the time. In invalidating the governor's orders, the court made it clear that this decision applied back to the July 30th, 2020 executive order, which was actually Order 82. That was the original subject of the original lawsuit, as well as then Executive Order 90 and 104 and 105 that all came further after that. So finally, the court concluded, right in a 4-3, that any additional executive order also that may be seek to declare a state of emergency in response to COVID-19 will be based on the same statutory occurrence and therefore invalid based on the 4-3 vote and what was stated. So basically, the Supreme Court invalidated the governor's exercise of his emergency declaration authority based on the statutory timeline restrictions. Therefore, there was no longer a statewide face covering mandate in Wisconsin. So that's what exactly was occurred in the 4-3 decision. Now, with that being said, Wisconsin statutes grant school boards the authority to, and they always have, under the statute 120.1335, they've always granted school boards the authority to adopt rules applicable to persons who enter or remain in a building operated by the school board. Meaning, right now, school boards have the authority to, under that statute, to determine, as they always have, what is that safety that they want to provide? What are they requiring of in their school district? Could that be challenged in the future? I guess, but that statute's been around. But could it be challenged? I guess. So where I go with that is, so if you look at our reentry handbook is from basically, I think, on page 2, let's not forget the importance of page 2. And page 2 it's our reentry objective. And our reentry objective, after we had clearly determined that we were going to provide 2 modes of instruction for people, for families and students, the mode of in-person and the mode of virtual, and we were gonna provide it 5 days a week, full, right? After we determined that, then we created the objective to achieve that. And the objective was to create actions that help to reduce exposure and mitigate spread, while also providing learning environments that support the physiological and psychological health of our students and staff, which that last component was added because we recognized those were going to be key actions to us entertaining clubs and extracurriculars and other things. And we needed to add that extra language, or else we probably would never be thinking about actions to clubs and extracurriculars, all those things. So where I go with that is, I think it's really important that we always have to keep our objective at the forefront. We just have to. Reducing exposure, mitigating spread, right? And it's about students and, as Carrie said earlier, staff. Students and staff at the forefront. So on the rest of the pages, I mean, yes, we get into a lot, but when you get to page 14, that's where all the health and safety recommendations start coming in. And that literally then is page 14 to the rest of the booklet. 14 through 58 or 60. I mean, that's the rest of the booklet. Every single thing is about mitigation measures. One of the mitigation measures, right under health and safety, the face coverings. Now, our face coverings, we removed the language to the state mandate months ago. I mean, I think that was in the fall. We removed that language and we said, the new language, and this was back in fall, East Troy Community School District will require face coverings and will continue to reassess as needed throughout the school year. The reassessment may occur monthly and may occur at regularly scheduled board meetings. At this time, though, this requirement includes every student, early childhood, and 4K through 12th graders will be wearing a face covering if they are indoors or in an enclosed space, and another person or persons who are not members of an individual's household or living unit are present in that same room or enclosed space. And then we go on to define all the things that go with face coverings, and we talk about physical distancing, which could be another discussion that we have to have because physical distancing has been obviously discussed, and 3 feet now can be done within a school building, but they still recommend that you should try to do 6 whenever possible, especially for areas where masks would be down. Public speaking or eating or possibly music and choir and band and those things, which I understand. So, and then the rest, we go through all the other measures, right? The preventative health screening, every single mitigation measure that Andy and the health and safety team have done from a standpoint of all of our HVAC system, right, that we put in for our indoor air quality and the bipolar ionization and the microbial spraying that we constantly do, and that I know his staff did diligently again over spring break to every parts of the school district. All of those things. So where I go with it is, when I think we're talking about anything in the reentry handbook, and we talk about face coverings, the way I look at it at this time is it's just one of our many mitigation measures. I mean, it's just one of many. Now, some people may look at that and go, that's right, it's one of many, so we don't need to utilize it. I would say, obviously this is a board discussion, and I put on the topic, informational discussion action, because I have no idea where people maybe want to take this. So I put all 3. From my perspective, I will state that we're in April. We started September 1st. What that reentry handbook has done, and more importantly, the people who are following all the reentry, and that's students included, and families help, along with all this great staff, it's kept us in person. It's kept us. Like, we have a proven track record of success. Proven. Unlike some other districts that have shut down. And that doesn't mean because they weren't doing anything wrong. Some of it is pure luck. Let's be honest. I mean, some of it is just pure luck. But It has kept us in session without having any major building or even large grade level shutdown. So when I view that, I go, let's get through the next 2 months. Let's get through April. Let's get through May and the beginning of June. Let's get through it with our reentry handbook intact, implement it the way it is, support our staff, support our students, support our families, get through it. Because to me, the number one goal, dispute or not over mask or not mask, my thing is stay in session. Keep it going the way it is, right? We've got it going well. Keep that going well. And then, as we've said already, I just said in the operation model, everything's got to get reassessed. Everything. We have to reassess everything. I mean, we have to reassess, what are they talking about physical distancing for this summer, next year? What are they talking about face coverings for this summer, next year? What's happening within our community? What's happened with vaccinations, right? I mean, all those things, you know, I mean, there's just so many different things that I say, let's just keep the course, in my mind. Keep the course. It doesn't mean that I don't like to alter the course. I always alter course on recommendation, but I want to get through our objective this year. And I really think back in September, if any one of us would have been asked, will you stay to that reentry handbook if I promise you it'll get you through the whole year? I think we all would have been like, oh, done. Because I don't think any one of us thought we were going to get through the year. I mean, I remember hearing people saying, Halloween I'm giving you. Thanksgiving I'm giving you. And I remember going, yeah, maybe. You know, but at least we're trying. And at least we're doing it. And we're going to learn from it. Right? I mean, some districts were just too afraid to try it. I get it, but I'm glad we did. And we did a lot. And I think we made changes in the handbook to keep it going. We never just stayed, it never stayed stagnant. That's not even close to last September's handbook. I mean, if you look at it, we have post-vaccinations in the handbook now. There's post-vaccinations. We tell families, we're not taking a side to get vaccinated or not get vaccinated. We're just telling them, based upon what CDC has recommended now, if there's a vaccination and you've gotten through both doses and it's past the 14th day of the second dose or 14 days of the one-time dose vaccinations, then if you're in an unintended exposure, you don't have to quarantine at this time unless you become symptomatic. So we've changed that, right? There's a post-vaccination in there. Again, we're not trying to tell people to go get vaccinated or not. That's everybody's own choice. I respect that greatly. But we always are updating based upon what we're getting from Walworth County and CDC. I just feel at this time that it would, you know, I go back to what I said a little bit about the referendum, stability, I guess, certainty and uncertainty. And I just say, let's stay with stability to provide certainty to the end of this year. We got enough things that we don't have stability with that are now uncertain that we're working through. I think this would just be another one that would lend itself to more uncertainty, and we're having to work through another thing. And I think if you provide too much uncertainty, it's called chaos. So that's just you guys pay me to give a recommendation and my advice, so I gave it. That's it.
I'd like to make a motion that we guarantee face coverings for the rest of the school year.
Okay, we have a motion and a second discussion.
Add it on. I was under the impression we were just gonna leave it, but that's all.
Yeah, I couldn't hear you either, Jess, I'm sorry.
I was under the impression we were just gonna leave it. I
Okay.
didn't anticipate us making a decision on it. I'm fine with either.
Okay. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I have the same feeling, and I was the guy that said I'd be thrilled if we made it to Halloween. Man, thank God I was wrong. I mean, I've never been so happy to be wrong, I don't think. But, you know, we've spent so much time in the last 10, 11, 12 months talking about how do we get back to normalcy. And, you know, we just had the conversation about prom. And I think about graduation last year, and I'm still in awe of the fact that we had a graduation last year. And speaking as a parent who had a senior last year that missed out on a lot of things, you know, nobody likes wearing these. You know, let's not pretend otherwise. But I'd wear this thing for the rest of my life if I could get back some of the things that my kids had to give up last year. And, I mean, our kids have proven that once again, they're a heck of a lot more resilient than we are. I don't know. There was a lot of talk early on about the biggest concern being, can we enforce this? Can we keep kids doing it? Again, the kids aren't the problem. It's always us. It's us old people that don't necessarily adapt as well. So, I mean, I would agree. I think now more than ever, if we can just keep things normal through the end of the year, we're going to have a lot of change over the summer. Some good, some bad, I suppose. But at the very least, I think we set ourselves up, being able to say that we had a fully successful year this year, keeping kids in school, that's a feather in our cap that not a lot of other districts have. So.
Kathy?
The motion there was through the end of the school year? Okay, because summer school will be right after that, and I didn't know if you wanted to address that.
Guess we can talk about that as we get closer, but we really don't have too many meetings between then and now. It's only a few more, so.
Should we add on summer school just to take care of it? Or do we want to?
It's up to you. You made the motion.
All right, we'll add summer school to the motion. Guarantees face coverings for the rest of this school year and through this coming summer school.
You second it? Do you agree? Okay. Personally, I don't really believe that the face masks have done much one way or the other based on data that I've seen. States that have mandated it or not mandated, the curves are the same. There's not much data one way or the other that these things really work. On the other hand, I do understand the feeling that maybe they do something, and that has been the overriding feeling through the school and the staff and a lot of the kids that maybe it is helping. I don't know. At this point, I don't see changing it is worth it with 6-8 weeks left. So.
I agree, Ted. It's kind of more of an err on the side of caution. Why mess with it now, you know, if we've come this far?
Yeah, I mean, there's a potential, maybe they're doing more harm than good based on the data I've seen, but I guess there's no empirical data to prove that. But just looking at it, it looks that way based on now, especially with the states with the heavy mandates have the higher cases than the states that don't. But again, it's just superficial evidence.
I think one of the things we all have to watch out for too, I mean, we all have our personal biases and opinions, and I think that's pretty clear as we go across the board. I think one of the things we always have to do when we come into these meetings, we very often, I mean, every single meeting, we take the advice of people who are smarter in the day-to-day operation of this district than we are. And we ask them to give their reasoning, to give their logic, but ultimately we listen to people who are experts. And I guess the one thing that has not changed, and I verified this today, current CDC guidelines updated for April 6th still say number one mitigation that is most effective, or the number one listed mitigation are masks. Now there are other things in there as well too, obviously. But until the five of us have a greater expertise in immunology than the CDC, but I think, I mean, fundamentally, I don't think that's a question we try and answer now. I think we try and keep this as normal as we can to finish out the year. And then we readdress this come fall, because again, if there's a vaccine for kids 14 and under in the fall, like they're projecting, this discussion changes completely. So.
Yeah. Ultimately, history will be the judge of it.
Absolutely.
They won't care what our opinion is.
Mhm. All right, any other discussion? All right, we have a motion and a second and an amended motion to carry it through summer school. So, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. It's 4-1. Motion carries. Anything else on reentry? All right, next item, discussion and consideration of approval of 66.031 affiliated member agreement with the Rural Virtual Academy and the East Troy Community School District.
Yeah, so I'll let Kate and Amy take this. I'll let Kate and Amy take this. I just wanted to remind you that last June, so in the summer, when so much was going on, we had brought forth consideration of partnering with RVA, which is the Rural Virtual Academy. And after a lot of discussion, the board had approved of a one-year contract with them. But then you had asked, if you look back in our June 15th minutes, I think it is, the board approved it but said, look, it's 2021 membership and we want to reconsider it at the end of the school year. So we're bringing it forth back again to have dialogue, discussion, and to seek whether or not if you would want to approve of another one-year contract due to the fact they're very willing to, usually, at one point in time, they said there's going to be a 2-year, and we were going to make a decision, but they have elected to allow us, again, a 1-year contract due to the fact, and Kate and Amy can go into the specifics, but because of the limited usage that we had due to the fact it was so late in the summer months of June, that the seats were already full and everything else, and we just didn't have a chance to have families take advantage of it. Whether or not they will or won't, we don't know. So we were out zero money for that, zero. But now we kind of want to consider the possibility of should we provide this opportunity still for our families this coming year due to the fact they didn't have that opportunity last year. And see if anybody wants to go full-time virtual through RBA and not through the live streaming of East Troy, right? So it's basically like a charter that we're agreeing upon, right, to work with Medford, and that we would be doing it with Medford schools. Again, the positive thing that we said last time, right, is we get to count these students. There are resident students. So if we, with this agreement, if they elected to do the virtual charter through Medford, we still get to count them, right? We get to count them as our students, and then we're in agreement with Medford. If we don't offer this and they decide to do virtual, and they say, you know what, we're gonna go to McFarland's virtual, we don't get to count them. We just lose our resident student to McFarland. So that's what it comes down to. And we have, you know, as we know, we do have students that are going through different virtual online programs outside of our district. So.
And we had some training opportunities with it also, I
Yeah,
believe.
so Chris pretty much summed up what
Sorry.
we were going to say. So when that got approved, and we had everything finalized, we got notification that seats were full. And since then, they have expanded their number of staff, so we have more of an opportunity for seats perhaps in the upcoming year. And the key is getting to count them as our residents. So we would like a fair shot to determine whether or not this could potentially save students who have left or are leaving for other virtual options. We didn't get that opportunity last year. Yes, there was professional development. I participated in their professional development. I don't think we need it, quite honestly. It didn't meet the needs, so we're not going to ask for that part of the contract. That's checked no for the upcoming year, because I just didn't, it wasn't a good fit. I mean, it was good, but it just wasn't a good fit for us. So we would just like a go at it for this year, since we didn't, I mean, they were great to work with last year and said, you know, we're not charging you because we couldn't give you any seats, and I still got to participate in the professional development. But we'd like a shot to see if it does work. And if it doesn't, then we can legitimately reevaluate that at the end of next year. But maintaining our resident students is the key.
Sure. Okay.
Kate, I don't know if you have
Well,
anything.
anything else, Kate?
I don't really have anything more to add to
Okay.
what the two of them said.
Sure. All right, well, I'll make a motion to approve the contract between the East Troy Community School District and RVA for one more year.
I'll second.
Okay, discussion?
Given that the discussion tonight is going to revolve almost entirely around finances, can you just remind us, we get to keep those students as resident students, what's the real back and forth flow of revenue and cash, so we kind of have a sense as to, Kathy?
They charge almost the same as if they go open enrolled out, but $1,000 less. Okay, so they take whatever the open enrolled out fee is, minus $1,000. But then there is a membership fee, and the membership fee varies depending upon how many students you have, so I can't give you a for sure answer.
Okay.
If you only have one student attend, you actually lose money because the membership fee is greater than that $1,000 you saved. But then there's a break-even point, and then there's you are recouping the gains. Now that's in the preliminary tier, I'm gonna say, again, that we have the agreement with. If we further our relationship and stay with them and we have a lot of students going, we can change the structure of our agreement, become more of a partner with them, as some school districts have, and then there's a little bit more savings again. But as Amy and Chris and Kate were saying, I think the real benefit is that the resident students stay connected to our school district. They stay involved in our discussions with them. We're helping them apply to RVA. It's not so hands-off that some other virtual schools are.
Okay.
They can participate in sports, so, there's a chance to get them back, because ideally, financially, as you say, the discussion being financial, it's not a good financial situation to go to this either, but it's a better financial situation than pure open enrollment out to a virtual school is.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, all in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Middle school rooftop AC units. This will be a good one.
Good evening. So just going to give you some informational pieces on the HVAC system over at the middle school. It's not, this is not going to be fun to discuss, I guess. Back in fall, we started doing some preventative maintenance tasks with our mechanical contractors on these units. So we have 10 rooftop units. They're season 4 units. They serve areas such as our cafeteria, gyms, kitchen, offices, all the classrooms, corridors, library, that sort of thing. The only place it doesn't serve is the addition that was done in 1993. So these rooftop units were installed in 2004. So they're only 17 years old. If you know anything about life expectancies with mechanical equipment, you'll know that some things are lasting just 15 years. Some maybe we can extend the life out to 25 years. Unfortunately, what we found with these rooftop units is not really good news at all. So back in fall, through an inspection that we were doing, we did find that one unit had a cracked heat exchanger. The service tech had kind of stumbled upon it. We are fortunate that it was serving an area like the cafeteria that wasn't really being used, and we were still able to heat it up and through December until we made the necessary repair. The necessary repair happened to be, again, so we found a cracked heat exchanger. So the tech had pulled the burner assembly off, and that's when that was exposed. So he made us aware. We started talking about what can we do with this? Can we re-weld, because it was a weld that broke. The location of these welds are right where the burner is, so it's going to be the hottest point when the burner kicks in. Again, they're rooftop units, so they see our coldest temps. Those burners come on right away in the morning, and it takes on that heat, creates a major expansion, and then eventually over time, that constant expansion contraction starts, wreaking havoc on those welds. So we started looking at, well, can we weld this? No, not really, not because of liability reasons. What's it gonna cost to, is there warranty? No, there's no warranty anymore. What's it gonna cost to put a new heat exchanger in? Can we even get a new heat exchanger? The unit's 17 years old. What's it gonna cost to replace the unit? So after all that discussion we were able to identify that, yeah, we can get a heat exchanger. We identified kind of a ballpark cost of replacing a unit. We knew that we couldn't really feasibly do that. So we moved forward with replacing the heat exchanger. I initially had a quote for right around $7,000. That included the cost of a crane, because at first our mechanical contractor felt they might have needed a crane to lift this up onto the roof. We were fortunate they didn't. It came back in about $5,800. So that's that repair that was identified in fall of 2020. So as we started getting through our winter, we started having other issues. The custodian had made me aware of some other issues with these rooftop units. So we had our mechanical contractor come back out, and while he was doing another similar repair that they did in fall, now he found that, because each of these units have 2 heat exchangers, now he found that 2 heat exchangers on a different unit have the same issue going on. So I asked them to halt all their repairs. We need to focus on every single unit, because they're all the same age, same make. And I was like, let's go through, pull these burners, and start looking for these cracked heat exchangers. Just as I assumed, every heat exchanger on these rooftop units, so again, 10 units, they all have, that's a total of 20 heat exchangers. 19 of them have cracked welds on the heat exchangers. The only one that didn't was the one that we just replaced, okay? So when you start talking about cracked heat exchangers, if this is a conversation you might have with your furnaces, right? When you start noticing a cracked heat exchanger on your furnace, you start thinking about your carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide. Well, we are already starting to work with environmental management consultants to do some air quality tests, okay? Like we're doing radon tests here. There's probably a little device hanging around here. We're doing them at Little Prairie. But we had already had discussions about doing some of the indoor air quality tests with EMC. So we got them out right away and did some preliminary tests. Things look good, so we were fortunate there. But then we did some more long-term tests. I got those results back. We still look good. So we know that this just didn't happen over winter. This has probably been going on for 3 to 5 years. They've been slowly starting to crack. Maybe the last one went this year. There's no way to say that. So we've been kind of living in this world, but it's not a world that you want to live in. Okay, so we're going to continue to do some monitoring there until we can come up with a rational, practical plan, find funding to replace these. Because as I stated, we're looking at a cost of replacing one heat exchanger at anywhere from, let's just say $6,000 and above, okay? Because again, it depends. Each unit has a different size. So if we need a crane, that's going to go up. If we don't need a crane, that cost is going to be a little bit lower. As soon as we realized this, I started working with a company to do some mechanical engineering and design, just so we could look at our options. Because again, they're 17 years old. They obviously didn't hold up. We have a lot of other repairs that are going on. There's a history of repairs happening with these things. So why not take a look and see what it's going to cost to replace those? Can we replace them 1 for 1? We replaced them 1 for 1 back in 2004. We found out that because ASHRAE has actually, so that's the American Society of Heating, Refrigeration, Air Conditioning Engineers. We found out through them that we really shouldn't be replacing those 1 for 1. So there's also energy efficiency standards that these no longer meet. So we can possibly be grandfathered to replace them again, just like we did in 2004, but it's not advised. So again, even if we repair these, it's not even advised to be repaired. It's not advised, it's not recommended to replace them 1 for 1. We still have that design happening. We're scoping out some products to replace those 1 for 1. Those are called multi-zone systems. But we also move forward with looking at what we could do with a different system. We toured the buildings, looked for other opportunities. What other different types of rooftops can we put on there? But we're looking at, if we just did the heat exchangers, we're looking at over $100,000. If we did a 1-to-1, which again doesn't really meet ASHRAE standards no longer, we're looking at $800,000 to $1 million. As we start looking at the design of the middle school and what we could do different in trying to, purchase equipment that's going to last longer than 17 years. We have systems being designed, but we're looking at 1.8 to 2.5 million. We have a system that's, you know, a new modern system called a VRF system, variable refrigerant flow system. You know, we're looking at $3 million for that. So it's really just trying to work with the design engineers, the mechanical engineers, and looking at what's the most practical system. Most of these systems that they're recommending, not recommending, but they're scoping for us right now, still only have life expectancies of 20 years. I'm gonna be honest with you, I think I can do a good job working with our mechanicals and our custodial staff to continue to set up good plans to extend those lives. You know, when somebody tells me 20 years, I have original furnace in my home that was built in 1998. I like extending the life of things. So when somebody says 20, I'm gonna try to push that out. But one system does, you know, an air handling system with a boiler plant and VAV system, which is a real common one that's being used in commercial buildings, not just school buildings, but school buildings, commercial buildings. You know, again, that one's pushing, I think it was like it was right around here, 2 to 2.5 million to do a plant, another boiler plant, and add some air handling equipment. But again, that was only 20 years. We have another one that's looking up to the 30-year range. So again, this is nothing more than informational, just making you guys aware of the situation over there. I think we'll probably bring it back to you once we get more information, and those numbers I shared with you are completely ballpark. The design or mechanical engineer is going to continue to work on that and get more solid numbers, trying to find out what the best fit would be for that plant over there, or the HVAC system over there. But I'm happy to answer some questions for you guys right now if you have them.
Knowing that
Are your systems on automation control?
They are all on building automation systems with the exception of Dobeck.
You have software that you can control?
Yep, we do scheduling, we can do overrides, we can monitor, we can check, you know, we can monitor for alarms, we can trend data, we can track historical logs.
Okay. Do things like bringing cold air at nighttime, reduce costs and things like that?
So we wouldn't bring in cold air at nighttime, we would shut the dampers down. We would allow for minimum outside air if there's occupancy. But yes, we schedule things. The only thing that really runs at night in this district right now is we're able to focus in on activities like athletics or clubs or the board meeting here tonight. Otherwise, we shut things down at a certain time. We are running a little bit longer this year because of the pandemic, another recommendation from the CDC.
So you have all your controls, are they automation or are they on the wall? Do you have any controls on the walls?
There,
People can control, or is it all done through your software?
everything is done through the software. There are overrides in certain areas. And then there is still some older technology that we have, like in our vestibules, that will have like a standalone control. Well, in most cases, you're not going to be able to do anything with those. I love talking HVAC. Keep it coming. That's my forte right there. So
No, as,
I just, you know, it's just a cost, just a cost saving on the air conditioning part, bringing the cold air at nighttime.
So you're talking economizing, yeah. So I'm thinking heating season still. So we do shut things down. Now you got to be careful. So we do setbacks, okay? So setbacks applies to both, you know, air conditioning, you know, cooling season and heating season. So we do setbacks. You have to be careful. You don't want to set things back too far because then you lost all that energy. If I'm shutting something down to like more than 7 degrees, so if I have like this space set for 68 degrees for for heating, and I go to 61, when that system comes back on, trying to make up that 7 degrees, I didn't save anything.
Yeah.
So we're doing all those things, and same for cooling. If we have something set for 74, we'll maybe let it go up into the right around 79, 80, but we're gonna make sure that we don't go any higher, because then when that compressor kicks in and that condenser kicks in, we're gonna lose all that savings.
How old are your controls?
So we use iView controls, or iView building automation system. Most of that was just updated. They just did that before I came into the district. But no, they're not that old. And I mean, there's just like anything. I mean, I can talk about all the different components in these buildings, and everything's gonna need some type of maintenance, and there's repairs that happen. I mean, I'll be honest with you. We have a brand new rooftop over at Little Prairie, no longer in warranty. It had a board go. You know, so everything, we still try to stay up on everything and go through everything. We're still developing a good PM for our custodians when they get the time, so. Yes, I do. We do it quarterly.
You do it quarterly?
Yeah.
Do you wash your filters at all?
So we have pleated filters.
Just
So,
a paper pleated filter?
yeah. And then we do coil cleaning.
Okay, you do coil cleaning,
Mhm.
wash the coil?
Mm-hmm.
How about your pillow block? You grease your pillow block and things like that?
Yep. And just to share with you, so, and I'm proud of this, by the way. So since Dale brought it up, I'm glad you brought it up. So at Prairie View, there's been a situation over there where we were getting a lot of noise in the gym. So Dan Fox, who's been with our district for a very long time, it's been really bothering. He was like, can we look into this over the break? You know, we can't really shut it down. I was like, yeah, let's do it. So, and then we just had a hire over at Prairie View, or Little Prairie, Dan Holterman, that, yeah, he was an HVAC tech. I'm just lucky to have him in our district. And so he and Dan went in there, and right away they're like, I think it's the bearing. There's something wrong with the bearing. So we slipped the bearing off. We found that it had scored the shaft. The shaft was bad. Our custodial, we have the whole thing taken apart right now because of what they found. So we did that all in-house. We probably saved this, I figure we saved the district about $2,000 because we didn't have to bring in our mechanical contractor for that. So we worked with Trane to get the shaft. It should be here tomorrow, and then they'll put it all back together. But yeah, you're absolutely right. So we grease our pillow blocks. We grease our motors, which has its own schedule. We tighten our belts. We align our belts. We clean our fans. We check our set screws. We check our motor mounts. I could keep going.
There's a cartridge, grease cartridge, with a little spring that automatically greases pillow blocks.
Mhm.
So you can extend the life of the about $28 a pop.
On the pillow blocks. Yeah, and I don't really replace pillow blocks. I take the pillow block off, pull the bearing out, and put the pillow block, and then add a new bearing and put the pillow block back on. I'm not a big fan, this is the only reason I'm not a big fan of what you're talking about, those auto greasers, is then there starts to build like some complacency. I want to make sure that those guys are going in there, checking all those things, hitting those. So my maintenance program is twice a year. So winter and summer, where they're going in there and they're greasing the bearings, cleaning the bearings up, cleaning the Zerk fitting up, and then doing all the other things that I previously mentioned.
Just saying that it's, you never run the risk of running out of grease on a bearing.
Yeah, yeah. I'll definitely consider it, yeah.
I mean, we had the same thing at Chrysler, and we had the issues with the, I saw those pillow blocks catching on fire, that they would run out of grease. So we added those automatic greasers, and we have to maintain them, of course, you have to look at them, make sure they stay filled, otherwise they're useless.
Yeah.
But the reduction in all those filler blocks we had to exchange was like 70% less, you know?
Mhm.
We're getting a little into the details now.
Yeah,
so-
I'd love to talk about that with you, because I've been in educational facilities doing maintenance for 20-some years, so you got a few years on me, but I definitely wouldn't mind talking to you about some of those things, so, sorry.
All right.
So question I was gonna ask, knowing that this is an unfair question, knowing that you're monitoring air so there's not a safety situation for kids, how quickly do you think we're gonna need to act on this? I'm assuming that we will be lucky to get through the end of the year, need action prior to the coming school year, but
So I think with the air sampling that was done by EMC, I think we bought ourselves some time.
okay.
We are adding carbon monoxide detectors, that's the only thing that scares me.
And
So-
luckily, we're getting away from the heating season, so.
So
Yeah.
the size of the cracks are not so significant. They're definitely an issue. This is critical. But because of the size of the crack, there's enough negative pressure on the combustion side that I think we're gonna be okay. But like I said, we're still putting in carbon monoxide detectors to test it. I don't want, if there's staff watching, families that have kids there, I would not come here and feel good, telling you something. I would not be lying about the situation. I feel good about the situation. I was really happy with the reports that we got back, because now I know we have some time to really do the right thing. Look for the funding, design the right HVAC system, so.
And they're gonna be keying in on future savings on whatever system they recommend.
Yeah.
Yeah, future, saving utilities,
Oh,
essentially.
yeah, I think what you're saying is we'll see energy savings from that,
Right.
yes, yeah.
So as we look, assuming that we go with a more permanent solution, we have a range, I've heard, between 8 million for a if we went with just a one-to-one, a basic one-to-one solution, that's our best case scenario. up to a number like 3 million, so that's
Yes.
a wide range.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have to figure where that comes from. The other question I have is, how long do you think it's gonna take from the day that we say, okay, we think we now know where the funds are coming from the day we start to design until the day that you flip the switch and it goes active? How much time do you need?
So I don't know what lead times would be on new equipment. I know I can, like, let's just say we added a boiler plant. It already has a boiler plant. The boilers are too small. It's not like we can use those to maybe do, scab off of that. We're thinking that if we do a boiler plant, it's gonna be in a different side of the building than the existing one. But I know I can get a boiler pretty quick, but it's all the other stuff because, the equipment, we can probably get 10 to 12 weeks. But there's a lot of work because what I failed to mention is when we start doing some of this stuff, there's other things that are being disturbed like ceilings, walls. I'm not saying we're tearing down walls, but if we're running some new ductwork or adding VAV boxes, that's an impact. So we don't have a timeline yet until we really have, solid numbers so we can actually make a decision. And then depending upon what HVAC system we decide on, we all collectively decide on, then we can start developing those timelines so that we're not causing a burden to our learning. I don't feel like we have to rush into it, so. But we definitely don't, we have to do something, so. Yeah.
Okay, so you think a month you'll come back, or 2 months with some options?
Yeah, so the mechanical engineers, I talked to them today. I expect to hear from them soon. I think it's really up to Chris. I would assume that you would want to bring it back. Yeah, within a month.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I think
Next
we'll
board
have
meeting.
various options. Andy included myself and Kathy in his most recent dialogue and discussion. So, and it was very informative. As you stated, Bob, it's a wide range, right? And so it's going to be maybe what is ideal and what is doable. And then the board will have to decide what's ideal. And yes, there might be a long-term cost savings for what's ideal. Can we afford it? Can we afford it? Due to the fact, any number in that projection, anywhere from the 500,000 up until the 3 million mark, not a single one of those dollars was in the $8 million maintenance projects due to the fact of when this got identified. So this is all additional dollars, as we talked about. We have other repairs in this building that were not known at the time of last year, right? Well, now we've got one, in addition to the other 8 million of maintenance that we already know of. So I think the bigger question will be, where are we getting the money for this one repair, not all the other maintenance?
Do you want to talk options on that now or next meeting?
I do have one more quick, I'm sorry, don't do that. Is there any way you can go in with a wire welder and weld some of those cracks up?
That is not advised. The last thing we want to do is heat those up, start welding them, and there's no liability. There's just no liability there. So, I mean, that district would take full liability if something happened.
I don't think you get penetration in those cracks, I mean, they've already been wire welded when they manufacture.
I just don't feel good about welding things like that.
How about stick welding?
No welding. I'm sorry.
Kath, do you want, it's up to the board if you want to hear some of the options for the fund.
Yeah,
tonight.
let's kind of at least throw it out there so we can start thinking about it.
Okay, I've got 4 different paths, I cannot say that word, paths at this time. One, we are running currently a little bit below budget this year, so you could have some positive variance at the end of the school year to address this. 2, you have the ESSER funds, the federal funds, and we have looked, Andy and I, that this is one of the allowable expenditures under the ESSER guidelines. 3, you can take out a loan. Now, the Wisconsin rules for public school districts are that you can only take out a loan without referendum approval for up to $1 million. And when it's not approved by a referendum like our $8 million bond would have been, it is within or under the revenue limit. So that means the amount of your loan and however much you amortize over 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, that payment is still under the revenue cap, which means you, to have a balanced budget, have to cut other line items to accommodate for that loan payment, okay? Plus you have interest, but as we talked about, interest rates are favorable at this time. Your other option is fund balance. That also increases your interest costs when we go to do our short-term borrowing loan in the fall. So if you, again, take some money out of fund balance for this, we will have to borrow more when it comes to short-term borrowing, increasing our interest costs, and then, again, translating into cuts in other fashion to offset that increase in interest costs, much less if you want to rebuild the fund balance at some point that you've taken from. So again, those are kind of the 4 buckets, and then pros and cons of each of those buckets briefly.
All right, thanks, Kathy. I'm guessing it'll probably be a combination of that, but we'll discuss it once we get a final number. Okay.
Anything else? All right, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Andy.
Thanks, Andy.
Tony, Jessica, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next item, administration budget proposals, programming for the 21-22 school year.
That's going to go into executive session tonight with, but I guess that is on H, and I did ask because we're live streaming right now, and I'd prefer to have the community know this. So could we set the next special meeting, which will be strictly for that line item, due to the fact that everything will be enclosed tonight for that line item, but the next board meeting for special meeting will be open session for us to share the 2021-22 budget proposal with the community. So if we could set the date and time while we're live streaming, I would appreciate it. And personally, if next Monday would work, that would kind of be ideal. I definitely would like to have the full board present.
I'm okay with that. Tony?
You said next Monday?
Yeah.
That should be fine.
Okay, Steve?
I'll be there.
Okay.
Do you guys have a time? 6
6
o'clock or earlier? What, 6?
6.
6 is fine.
Okay.
All right, next item, approval of 2021-22 teacher contracts.
That'll be tabled due to the fact we first need to complete the budget proposals and programming approval by the board, and once that is approved, then we'll be able to set the finalization of teacher contracts for next year.
Okay, I'll make a motion to table that.
I'll second.
Okay, discussion?
No.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Administration and supervisory contracts.
That'll be the same, Ted, and that is to table it due to the fact we first need to get the budget approval first.
Okay, I'll make a motion to table that. Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Policy 345.1, grading systems.
Starting on page 11, this is the 3rd time through. 345.1 grading systems is just revamping the purpose of grades. Can I move on to all of them? Is it okay if we lump them together? Yeah, okay. The rule, we updated under Roman numeral number 4 to include criteria that defines the Law Day honor courses so that everyone's on the same page regarding that. Under Roman numeral number 7B, we revised just to refine. We didn't change anything. We just shored up the language around dropping a course. And then Roman numeral number 9, we added information regarding the Wisconsin Technical Excellence Scholarship.
Amy, just under 9, under C, I guess because it says an eligible candidate for the scholarship is high school student senior meeting at least one of the following criteria.
Mm-hmm.
Like numbers 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, all say participated. Well, could you have been in the youth apprentice program for a week and then quit, and that qualifies you because you participated?
So this is not our language. This is language from the state. But it does require, like they could be in it currently, they have to have completed that part of it.
Okay.
So participated doesn't mean like I did it for 3 days. But
Okay.
you could be in it currently in order to.
Okay.
But that's not language specific to East Troy. That's the state language. And then 345.2, we updated that information in there just to reflect trimester rather than semester. And added some information regarding our grading practices that we adopt as a district.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on those two policies? We've seen it before, last couple meetings.
Everything looks good. I'll make a motion to approve policy 341.5 and policy 345.2.
I'll second it.
Okay, any discussion? All right, all in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Those policies are approved.
Thank you.
Overnight
You're
field
welcome.
trip request for the spring of '22. That's a long ways away.
Closer than you think now.
So this is one of the items that we weren't sure we would be bringing to you this year, overnight field trip request, so we're excited. Amy Swanson has brought forth a proposal for a choir trip next spring, over spring break, that the choirs would go to Nashville, Tennessee. You can see in the itinerary, she has a very thorough packet with all of the payment structures. Grand Ole Opry, some really nice opportunities for them to hopefully sing and do a opener for a performer at the Grand Ole Opry, so a very nice trip. They're going to bus down, stay at the hotel, and then bus back.
Okay. Looks like a fun place to be.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the field trip as presented.
Second.
Okay, discussion.
Could we, oh, that's not great, sorry, I shouted. Could we, on the motion, approve of it as presented pending, obviously, the fluidity of a situation? That way, if things were to change, like, because under our current, right, reentry handbook, we are not. And obviously, we're anticipating allowing all field trips, hopefully by next fall even, dependent upon what's going on. But I would still like it just to allow that flexibility in a motion that says, we recognize that's a fluid situation.
I'll modify it pending the reentry handbook
Okay.
for the 21-22 school year.
Still second.
Any other discussion?
With that in mind, having been one that missed the Washington DC middle school trip last year, and thankful for the efforts of John Wick and everything he did to save us all the money and the deposits that he put down. I mean, the only thing I guess I would say is, as they are having this discussion, I would really like to see them pay special attention. I know there is verbiage in here about insurance, but it also looks like it's a 75% coverage. So just making sure that kids and parents are very aware of the fact that there is some risk if the district comes in and says, hey, from a safety standpoint, I would just hate anybody to think that, you know, they were fully protected when they're not.
We'll make a note of that.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, all in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Field trips approved. Professional staff employment, contract renewal, non-renewal, closed session.
That'll go into executive session.
Staffing proposals, same thing.
Yes.
Employment, or professional staff employment, that'll be in closed session.
Yes.
And professional staff employment retirement request.
Closed session.
Okay. Move on to reports. Dr. Ebner?
I have two. The first one is the outcome of the recent East Troy Community Schools District Board of Election. And I just wanted to review. So we had 4 candidates that were interested in the 2 positions, and I appreciate all 4 of them showing their interest. A lot of times during challenging times, it's hard to have people show an interest. So I appreciate that people look at it from a standpoint, it might be a challenge, but plenty of opportunity too. So, and I appreciate Jessica showing an interest in continuing to serve on it. And I respect Tony that he was unable to run as a candidate due to other personal commitments. And we'll get to showing our gratitude to Tony and Jessica in just a minute. So I just wanted to say thank you to all 4 candidates, to Anna Costopoulos Janis, who's here tonight. Anna, congratulations on receiving 1818 in votes. I want to Carrie always has a lot of just energy. I want to congratulate Dale Ames. Dale's here tonight with 1282 in votes. I want to congratulate Amber Lamar for just running and receiving 1263 in votes. And I want to thank Jessica Fuchs and Jessica, who received 1181 in votes. All 4 candidates obviously receiving numerous votes and numerous interests. So, and then I just want to say to, during this portion, to Anna and to Dale, welcome. They'll both be sworn in, as I've told them, both on the 26th of April, during our reorganizational meeting too, which occurs that night. And that'll be the first night officially on the school board. So thank you very much.
Yeah. It's something to look forward to.
My second thing is the recognition to our current 2 board members. And you might look at that and go, Chris, it's TWO. No, I wasn't talking 2 board members as a 2 when I put it on the agenda. Recognition 2 board members due to the fact at the point in time of the agenda, was it going to be a recognition to how many and all that. So at this point in time, I'd like to just thank Tony and Jessica so much for their service and all the work that you've done. I think, I'll allow you guys both to obviously speak on it. From my perspective, somebody who serves for the board and everything, it's been a pleasure getting to know both of you through the dialogue and discussions we've had over a topic, one-on-one discussions, to board level discussions, and just to be honest, if I can, to me, the growth, and I don't mean that like negatively. I just mean, boy, where you guys understand the district and the whole operations, and always bringing it back to students. I mean that, and I appreciate that. It's difficult. I tell you, in all the discussions we have, people think, of course you're going to bring it back to kids. I think it's hard to always remember what we're doing sometimes. And this is what I live. This is my job. And I think that's hard sometimes because there's so many components to everything. And you kind of forget, like, well, wait a minute, by that decision, how does it impact the kids? Like, if we spend the money and we got to take it from this fund to that fund, how does it impact the kids in the future for the kids? So I just, to all new board members, as Dale and Anna know and Amber knows, and as you guys all know, because I've had the opportunity of meeting with each one of you, when you were elected, I always go over what it means to be a school board member. And and it's not my impressions, but I do agree with it. I share WASB's impression, the Wisconsin Association of School Board Membership, that is representatives of the state school boards. And I couldn't agree more when they talk about that the school board's #1 thing is to be advocates for children. And that as a school board member, it's your duty and responsibility to position the district to make sure that all students can receive a quality education. And I think that sums it up, right? I mean, besides all the other necessary actions that come with it. And sometimes, honestly, the actions of inaction that come with it. Because as everybody who ever serves on a board finds out, there's a huge level of confidentiality sometimes that can be known but never shared. And that's not our impressions, that's state statutes in regards to what gets done in executive session, what doesn't get done in executive session, what can be done in open sessions, and respecting the privacy and confidentiality of staff and students and certain situations that occur, right? I mean, each and every one of you has had that unfortunate time in which people reach out to you and you're like, I can't comment on it, I can't talk about it, but yet we like to share a lot of information because it provide clarity, but we can't because we have to respect maybe that individual moment that involves a particular person more than what others are saying, right or wrong or indifferent. And that can be difficult, but I really do appreciate it. And so I'll end it with Tony and Jessica. It's been a pleasure serving for both of you as a part of the 5-member board. And I wish you the best. And I hope you stay actively involved in the school system. Because the more people who understand the school system and stay actively involved in the school system can only be a good thing for the school system. So thank you.
Thanks. It's been a learning experience. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
I feel like it's a little premature to say goodbye or anything since there's so much work yet to do in the next couple weeks.
Thank you.
One thing I do want to say, though, is I think Chris mentioned personal growth. It was an honor to serve these 3 years that the community gave me this opportunity. And I know there's people who knew me back when they couldn't have imagined me even looking at a microphone, more or less talking on it. One of the shyest people you ever met. So thank you for the opportunity to personally grow. Yeah, it's been an interesting 3 years, probably not the easiest for a school board. So, Ted, huh? It's kind of a rough one. Who knew a pandemic was gonna hit, right? Anyway, yeah, I appreciate it, and I will, you know me, I will be staying active in this community forever.
Likewise. Just want to say good luck to Anna and Dale. There is a steep learning curve, so you'll have fun, though. Thank you.
Anything else, Chris? Okay. Kathy, you have anything else for tonight? Amy? Kate? Okay. And I have nothing, so we'll move on to policy review and development. We have the second reading of policy 110, educational philosophy.
This is the policy that the Student Learning Subcommittee has worked on to incorporate the 6 C's into our language, since it's our foundation of our educational philosophy within the district. So language and definitions incorporating those 6 C's was included, and we updated some other language to address social emotional growth, worldviews, cultural responsiveness, etc. Any questions on that policy? Or with Steve? Yes, Steve?
On 34571, 1C.
Whoa, where are you? Oh, I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet.
Oh,
I'm
you're
on
just doing
110.
110? I got nothing on, I got nothing on 110.
You're way jumping ahead.
Yep.
All right, we can go on.
You were the kid that worked ahead in the school board.
Yep.
Okay, there's no questions on 110. We can move on to Steve's question.
Okay, 345.71, early graduation. Updated the language to reflect trimester. Essentially, that was it. So Steve, is that where your question is?
No, on C, it says the student must have the required 24 and a half credits for graduation. Shouldn't that be a minimum? Because it's like defined at 24 and a half. If they have more than that, they don't qualify? Because you've stipulated 24 and a half. Not you personally.
Minimum
So-
required.
Yeah, so you're
Right.
just saying add minimum.
Well, it should be minimum of that,
Sure,
right?
I can certainly add that. Anything
And
else on
for
that
F,
one?
does it matter which principal? We have 2 principals. It just says principal.
I think, no, they work together on that, so, I mean, I know one serves 9-10, one 11-12, but I would just like to keep it that way, because they work together. Are you guys okay with that? All right, thumbs up.
Executive voting method, nice.
And then 461 is Academic Excellence Higher Education Scholarship Program, and we have added the Technical Excellence Scholarship Program. The only change since the last time was the question that Steve had asked regarding the tiebreaker question. and how to word that. So that has been reflected in both of the tie-breaking procedures. So the question was originally, if you were to tie with another nominee, why should you be chosen? And the question was, would they know who that other nominee was to compare themselves with? So we tried to do that more generally. So why should you be chosen as the recipient of whatever the scholarship is? What sets you apart and makes you the best investment for these dollars? So to keep that more general, and that would be the same question for both scholarships.
Okay.
One more question.
Yes, sir.
Under B, we're still talking about semesters, and we're on trimesters. So how are you going to handle that?
You are
Because
right,
it's-
and that is something that we have talked about. That's the language that the state is using. So we are just gonna have to hit that. It's most likely gonna be after our second trimester, but we're gonna have to handle that as we go. That's what happens when not everyone's on a trimester at the state level. Any other questions? Okay, these will be back for third reading next month.
Okay. And we have 3 more first readings, 451, 851, and 500. Are these new? So they're not existing policies now? 450 and 850? Okay, all right.
Some of you may recall about 4 years ago, if you were on the board, that we quickly brought forth an updated wellness policy because about 5 years ago, it became a requirement at the food service auditing level with the Department of Public Instruction to have a formal wellness policy. And every 3 years, we go through a food service audit. And I think the word wellness is a little deceiving because it has a lot of food service protocol, I suppose is the word for it, within it. But then, as Ruth Bentley, our food service director, will be the first to tell you, it also then veers into, and your physical education curriculum is going to have these minimum standards, and we're going to try to promote exercise even for after-school activities. So it also, I don't mean to make it sound like only food service, it branches into lots of different areas as well. So again, June 2017, we kind of pushed through a policy amending our own policy. And then, again, there's a requirement that it be renewed or reviewed every 3 years. Well, so last year in the spring, we still hadn't done anything with it. And when COVID hit, an email came out that said, we are tabling that requirement because of COVID happening right now. So if your wellness policy was due June of 2020 for revision, which ours was, you have 1 more year. So here's our 1 more year. We have met with a very small committee, myself, the food service director, and our current staff wellness leader, Christine Homily. And we have gone through, I guess, suggested updates to our policy. One of the changes that's happened in the 4 years again, since 2017, is DPI has created essentially a policy toolbox for this policy, where you go into this little online portal and you start selecting under this heading. You can select as many as you want, but let's say 4 out of 10 of the radio buttons that you think apply to your school district and that fit your school district best. So first of all, we took our old policy, we ran it through an evaluator that they had, but then essentially we decided that this tool, again, that was out there to build a brand new policy was probably the best bet because, again, when we get audited, they're gonna say, where's your section on marketing in food products? Where's your section of, again, what you require in your physical activity curriculum? Which, by the way, we had to pull Amy into a meeting for those parts because, again, Ruth and Christine and I, we were way out of our league on answering any of those questions of where some of those wellness items are in our curriculum. So what you have in front of you on page 48 is the new proposed wellness policy. We would be replacing policy 451 with this one. Again, it was built kind of out of that DPI tool. The old policy, so you can compare for before the second reading, is on page 53. So this isn't one where we're like crossing out and highlighting things. It is like, here's a brand new policy replacing completely this old policy because, again, so much was different from that policy builder tool. As you read through the new policy, if you have questions, let me know. Then the reason why we have a reading for item E, the first reading of policy 851, advertising in schools, is because we felt that some of the new language in the wellness policy would have to change language in 851, the advertising in the schools policy, because again, there's a section about marketing foods. So what we have in 851 is an added statement, and it says cross-reference policy 451. Schools will restrict food and beverage marketing to only those foods and beverages that meet the nutrition standards set forth by USDA's Nutrition Standards for All Foods Sold in Schools, the Smart Snacks Rule. Marketing includes brand names, trademarks, logos, or tags, except when placed on a food or beverage product container. Displays such as vending machine exteriors, corporate brand names, logos, trademarks on cups, posters, school supplies, education materials, food service equipment, and school equipment. For example, message boards, scoreboards, uniforms, advertisements in school, publications, mailing, sponsorship of school activities, fundraisers, or sports teams, educational incentive programs such as contests or programs, and free samples or coupons displaying advertising of a product. So all of that, the USDA Smart Snacks is a rule that means we can only sell during the school day healthy items. There are a couple exceptions to that, but in general, you have to run foods through this calculator and make sure that they are, again, healthy, meet these healthy guidelines. The marketing of those foods is another step. And that this is, again, the suggested language by DPI, but from the policy tool builder. Marketing, again, you could say we'll allow marketing of these foods like, I don't know, let's just say water. We want to market water. So whatever the water label is, or we could allow it. The suggested language is, again, that we're going to restrict the food and beverage marketing to only those types of foods that meet the Smart Snacks. You may think it's silly. Of course we would do that. A few years ago, we had a big item at the board meeting. Steve's nodding and shaking his head and remembers that we had a company that was going to donate our tickets for our, I don't know, what was it, football tickets? Or was it all tickets? Tickets in general?
Tickets throughout the year that we provided all the athletic events.
And they had McDonald's logo and coupons on the back. And again, it was like, does this go against our wellness policy of marketing a food that doesn't fit under Smart Snacks? So again, that would be a case where this would apply, and we would have policy that says, no, we can't do that ticket.
Which is, I do think is an important discussion to have a little bit over this policy, or to be thinking about, because it's simple sometimes to approve of policies until the issue arises.
Right.
And then people want to always talk about, can we waive that policy for this moment? No. what we can do is always go back and revise policy, but it does not look good to be revising a policy at the moment of the time of a conflict. Instead, it's like, no, we gotta make a decision usually on the moment in time, and then at that moment in time, we go, we're not really too thrilled with how this policy is ending up being interpreted. Fine, we can go back and revisit and change it. Changing it just because of that one moment in conflict looks like we're picking it due to the fact of an individual or a group or at that moment. But as we all know, it happens, right? I mean, there's things we just don't envision. I want the board to be very aware of this. Like, we gotta think this through. I get where it's coming from, but I'm just saying, okay, right, wrong, or indifferent, we're facing deficits, right? There are plenty of districts, when you look around sometimes and you look around their fields, you see advertising all over the place, right? All over. You'll see it in their schools, right? I guarantee you they're receiving monies for that advertising, right? So I'm not saying that they're wrong or they're right or we're wrong, we're right. I'm saying we set ourselves in a conundrum of when people do that and then people are like, absolutely want this. But then when people get mad when we're turning down an advertising that somebody's gonna provide $25,000 per year to give us advertising for that, it creates that balance that we have to understand what we are approving of or acknowledging in regards to when we approve this. That's all I'm saying. I mean, I'm all up 100% behind healthy eating, and I like the smart snacks that can be provided. You just have to understand, when it extends into your advertising policy, it's taking on a new life of what you want then, that you might go, well, we didn't intend for it to be this after, like, instructional hours. We want the Milwaukee Brewers to give us that board with their advertising on it and put the Brewers and everything else. Okay, well, there's certain parts in here that might allow that now that we've done, because some people were afraid of alcoholic, and we said, look, you know, it depends on, is it their primary or is it just a restaurant? And, you know, plenty of people serve alcohol at a restaurant. Doesn't mean that we're promoting the alcoholic beverage. We're promoting the restaurant. But I think we have to think about those things due to the fact, in a time in which, and I'm not saying that should lead, but I know through my 14 years I've dealt with individuals who have very strongly stated, no, we don't get into these bids with people about advertising. We're not in that. We're not a marketing, we're educational. Couldn't agree more. And I don't like that road that's gone down. But I will say, I understand why school districts also go down that road. I do get it. They're trying to survive on they're trying to keep some programming with those agreements. I think you just have to think about that as you think about this policy. And I'd rather have you do it now than later. And I don't mean tonight, I'm just saying before approval.
I just think kids are already bombarded with advertising on all of their social media between TikTok and YouTube and whatever else they're on, Snapchat, television bombarded with advertisements, radio, like, it is an assault on your senses to be constantly bombarded with ads. We're educating kids, not trying to sell them the benefits of, you know, whatever food company or company wants to put up stuff. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and I think that's been the primary conclusion, I guess, when we've brought these discussions up in the past, that we weren't going to go that route of marketing a lot of things.
That's good.
So I haven't been in any other high schools in quite a while, or other schools. How unique is it that we take that stance? Anybody been in? I mean, are other schools in our conference or our CISA doing advertising, or?
We haven't been there in like a year.
Right?
I heard the question, but I was like, I have no idea, man.
No one's been in them, right?
Tony, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if Kath would have a better idea of that, or Ruth would have a better idea. I have no idea in comparison to others. We could find that out and look at that.
Yeah, there is one school, not in our conference, but in our kind of geographic area that has gone down a lot of advertising road. Again, one school in particular that I'm thinking of, but I can't say that I know of very many others.
I can speak a little bit. My former district, we did have some of that. We had a lot of vending machines. So you'd have like the Pepsi machines, and then that had timers on them, and then you'd have like the water ones, and then you'd have like the snack ones. It didn't generate a lot of revenue, and it also created a lot of unintended consequences where students would then be late to class because they were trying to get something, or there was an issue with the machines because they were always breaking down and things like that. So you have to also be really careful about what you're looking at getting and what you think you're going to get out of it. There's one thing with just slapping on a logo somewhere versus actually like selling things within the building and things. So I mean, it really opens things up really wide. Just because you can make money off of it doesn't necessarily mean there aren't unintended consequences that come with it. So cost benefit analysis.
Thanks, Ken.
Good point.
So just to clarify again, if you would be approving this policy the way it's written, it says marketing of food items, food and beverage would be limited to only those things that are smart snacks. So only those things that follow the nutritional, supposedly healthy, again, guidelines. So you could have an advertising logo with water. You could not have a McDonald's coupon on the back of your tickets. That's kind of two
I think
examples
that,
again.
I think that's the bigger discussion in my mind is the point that Kathy just stated, the marketing part. And again, I'm not trying to bias, I think that's the discussion. I mean, she even said that earlier, that, this is the recommendation from, I think, DPI, she said, or whatever. So it's language that's being provided, that's all. But I think that's the bigger discussion from the sentence that begins marketing includes to the whole way to the end about product. I think that's where a lot of the dialogue has to happen. The only question I had, Kath, that I want to make sure is that the board has got clarity on is in the first sentence when it says schools will restrict food and beverage marketing to only those foods and beverages that meet the nutrition standards set forth by USDA's nutrition standards for all foods sold in schools rule. My question is, what is the parameter of all food sold in schools? The parameter of, is that instructional day, which I get, or is that any school event? So I think to myself, am I over-expanding it? I'm thinking to myself, so we're at a football game in the concession stand, and the booster clubs are out there, and they're selling all the variety of foods, but it's not necessarily smart snack foods. If this policy were to be adopted, is that the impression that we actually have to limit that?
You can still sell it. It's the marketing again. So, like having a sign up at the
Okay.
football game.
Advertising component of it.
Advertising Coca-Cola would not be allowed.
I'm thinking like the concession stand has a Coke machine, and there's Coke going.
Right.
I don't think that's gonna be an issue. Again, that's where you're selling, that's your point of sale. It's not, again, a sign.
It's not just for advertising.
So it's not the Just Milk campaign that's, now we're supplying you with the chocolate milk when you're a fancy milk mustache.
Yeah. So marketing includes, it says right here, brand names, trademarks, logos, or tags, except when placed on a food or beverage product container, displays such as vending machine exteriors. So except that.
So even like message boards and scoreboards, it says under there then. So we're good on that. Because that's under the accept part?
No. No, so the beverage product container, I think, is fine, the vending machine is fine, but I guess I can clear that up, I can make some better language. Again, this is DPI language, so that we're all clear. Which way do we want it to read? Do we-
Clearer than DPI.
Yes, do we want it to be that you will not have Coca-Cola on a sign, or do you want it to be that Coca-Cola can be on a sign? That's what we need to make clear. Or we just strike this completely and don't even add the language, and then right now it can be according to it would have to follow the other advertising policy, but we don't even try to address this in the wellness guidelines. I will tell you the problem that the other side says is we're trying to encourage healthy foods. We're trying to encourage healthy eating. Food service, again, has all of these restrictions on what kind of grains they need to serve, what kind of calories need to be in every meal. And then they feel sometimes like the school doesn't support it if they then allow, for example, signs advertising chocolate candy bars. So that's the other half that I'm probably not explaining really well, but.
Do we allow fundraising of chocolate bars?
We allow fundraising, so again, the Smart Snacks, that one of the exceptions is a club can do 2 per year in school, non-Smart Snack products. This is a whole.
So the Smart Snacks, I'm guessing I haven't looked at the website, so I don't know, but I'm guessing that's something that falls under their branding, and probably has some sort of trademark because they want you to supply their stuff.
I wouldn't say it's their stuff, it's things that meet the
Falls under-
nutritional guidelines.
I understand that.
Yep.
A lot of times, those things tend to fall under the umbrella of, this is what we're putting forth, but really, like, they're getting paid
Sure.
to advertise this. This
Sure.
is healthy. Here it is. I have a very big issue with food education. Huge issue with it. So it's not you.
No, I get it. I understand that. Certain things have been definitely marketed to say, this meets Smart Snacks. So it's allowable.
So we just need the National Avocado Association to give us $8 million to put pictures of avocados everywhere?
Yes, that would be good. That would be good.
Avocados grown in the Midwest would be even better.
That would be good. So 2 takeaways again. I will need whether you want non-Smart Snacks, so unhealthy foods, to be able to be advertised. I need that answer. And then I will also encourage you, because there's a lot of things that could pitfall. And I'll be honest, this never rises to the level of importance to have people sit there and go through it and read it. But if you could, and you've been on the board a while, again, what kind of issues we've had, and think to yourself, I don't like this one. Again, before we even did that, we took a lot of, believe me, even controversial stuff out. Some of the language was like, stop cupcakes being brought into school, stop birthday party treats. That's not here because we've already even had that discussion, we're not going to do that, police. Stop allowing kids bringing Culvers to lunch. Again, we're not going to be the police. We're not going to say that kids can't bring in fast food, even though, again, that's unhealthy meal sitting there right in front of them. And so we can take this off too.
I'll definitely take a look and
Yep.
read over it. I'm gonna pull up this website right now just
Yep,
because I
sounds
wanna
good.
see what is actually on there. I have a feeling that it's.
Yeah. This one we kept, this advertising one we kept because of, again, I think the feeling of, at some point you draw the line, you say, well, then fine, are we not going to encourage wellness at all of our kids? Are we not going to try to teach them at all the consequences of? And then that's hard because that goes against so many other principles here that we get audited on, believe it or not, of, again, are we following the nutritional guidelines in the food service program? So. Yep. And then you have the first reading of the policy 500s. This is more my wheelhouse. So this is all of our policies, again, that pertain to personnel. And then annually at this time, I bring you things that we found that need to change. So they start on page 59. And like, again, all through the year, as we're dealing with issues or we're keeping track of different personnel things, I'll make myself a note in one spot in my office, and when these annual policies are up for revision, then we make all the changes at once. So I can go through these, but they're pretty simple. If you also want to take a look at them, which would you prefer? You want me to run through them quickly, or, okay. So page 59, it's just a reference because we, at one time, were debating duty-free teacher lunches, which is on page 61. And some of us, me, I was looking at policy 59, but then noticed later it's also under policy that is under page 61 or 533. So I just added a little reference like, hey, if you're going to look under this one for lunch, then see policy 533 for more details. If we jump to page 61 in policy 533, there is a statute about teacher lunch, and it was a little bit of news to me this year. So I added it in there because yes, it's law, and yes, we need to follow it, but it was helpful to actually write it in for me. Then jumping back to page 60, we're deleting the section of food service employees where a TB test is required every 2 years. We don't know where that came from. So that was another one that happened to come up in our day-to-day, and it was written in policy, and then we're like, is that really needed? And we can't find that anywhere in requirements, so we're deleting it.
Kathy?
Yep.
Just a quick question. Under that same page, under number 3, there's a TB test on there also. Are you just getting rid of that altogether? Or
No.
is it specifically for food service?
Yes.
Okay.
So TB tests by statute are required of new employees.
Okay.
So that beginning part deals with the new employee TB test. And actually, a test isn't even required anymore. This is really getting into the weeds. You can do this piece of paper, but we're not doing the piece of paper yet. So anyway, we're still staying with the test process for the new employee, just saying food service doesn't have to renew it every 2 years, which they haven't been doing anyway because nobody knew of that requirement, and it's not a requirement, as we can tell anyway. All right, on page 64, personal leave. We had the rule that you could not take a personal day the day before or the day after a vacation or non-paid working day, such as like Christmas break. But this year, there was actually like a working day that was a non-school day, if that makes sense. So like school got out the 22nd, and then the 23rd, full-time employees still had to work. Well, some, again, wanted to use a personal day for that day, and that would have resulted in them being docked their holiday pay, because that's how we did that always, to keep people not using a personal day on like the day before spring break and then having half the staff gone when kids need to be educated. So basically, we've added a line here that full-time, full-year support staff may take a personal day immediately before or after vacation non-paid working day if students are not present and approved by a supervisor, because there was absolutely no reason that person, it was a secretary, couldn't take a personal day on the 23rd when no kids were present either. It didn't harm the operations of the district. Page 63. We make people who are eligible for life insurance because they're eligible for the Wisconsin retirement system, because our life insurance follows the Wisconsin retirement system rules, and once you are eligible for Wisconsin retirement system, you're eligible for life insurance. But if people are working 20 hours or less, we make them pay that. So I my new payroll person was monitoring everybody who's in this category of working less than 20 hours. She was monitoring to make sure that if they went over 20 hours, then they didn't have to pay anymore. That's a lot of monitoring. So I want it to be that if at the start of the school year or fiscal year, you're not expected to work 20 hours, then we don't revisit it until the next school year. We don't revisit it by payroll, for example. Page 64, we've always done this one this way, we just didn't have it in writing, so I wanted it in writing. That if you are working Saturdays or Sundays, a regularly scheduled custodian after 3 p.m., that's not eligible for the night differential, the 50-cent extra hour night differential. And then page 65, the last one, Family Medical Leave Act. We have not, again, had in writing when your benefits start being docked post-FMLA, and we don't have a lot of this. I mean, maybe, I've been here 12 years now, maybe 1 or 2 times this has even become in play. But I don't know. I guess maybe I've had a few questions lately, and I wanted to have it in writing. So when an employee is under family medical leave, their benefits continue. And if they were to be still employed post-FMLA, in a sense that they were still employed, but like their pay was being docked, I wanted to have a when does, again, we turn around and start docking per diem benefits. So it would be the first next month. So if somebody runs out of FMLA March 18th, in April, we would also begin docking for their benefits. And again, the 1 or 2 times in 12 years, that's how I've done it. So I'm just writing the language to be behind what I've done in practice. And then the one that I haven't had to encounter, but I wanted to have a provision for it, if someone is taking intermittent leave and their FMLA has run out, then after 20 intermittent dock days, which is about a month of work, then we would also begin docking benefits. So kind of the same provision of the other person, that if they ended work on March 1st with FMLA being run out at that time, then April would begin a docked situation. For benefits, they're already being docked pay, but when do the benefits start being docked? And again, I've done it that way, just looking to have it in writing.
One real quick question, Kathy.
Yeah.
Going back to the life insurance for people at 20 hours and below who are WRS eligible.
Yes.
It specifically says that it's governed by contract. How often, how many times in the last few years have we had somebody mid-year change a contract so that they, I guess what I would hate to see happen is if somebody was asked by the district to shift their hours up 6 weeks into the year, who was working 24, 28 hours a week, who was justifiably entitled.
Good point. I could add or at a, what's the word? There's like a substantial.
A substantial change in the
Yeah.
position of the request. I mean, you understand what I'm getting at.
Yes.
I just don't want somebody to get in and legally and in good faith qualify for something, especially if they're doing us a favor. You know, if we had somebody go out on maternity and they had to bump up their hours accordingly to support the district.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yes, I like that. I'll work on some language for that.
Thank you.
Sounds good.
I will make a motion to adjourn to executive session for discussion of professional staff employment, contract renewal, non-renewal, staffing proposal, professional staff leave of absence request for consideration, and professional staff retirement request for consideration, advising under 1928.51, 1928.51
I will second that.
Yes.
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 Thank you.